Welcome to Portland City Council. City Council represents all Portlanders and keeps to do the city's business. The presiding officer preserves order and decorum during city council meetings so everyone can feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe. To participate in council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or the first readings of ordinances. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. If it does not, you may be ruled out of order.
As it
When
sounds,
testifying, please state your name
A-U-D-I-T.
for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please
As
identify
it
it.
sounds.
The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When you have 30 seconds left, a yellow light goes on. When your time is done, a red light goes on. If you're in the audience and would like to introduce support for something you said, please feel free to do a thumbs up. If you want to express that you do not support something, please feel free to do a thumbs down. Please remain seated in council chambers unless entering or exiting. If you are filming the proceedings, please do not use bright lights or disrupt the meeting. Disruptive conduct such as shouting or interrupting testimony or council deliberations will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being ejected for the remainder of the meeting. After being ejected, the person who fails to leave the meeting is subject to arrest for trespass. Thank you for helping your fellow Portlanders feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe.
Thank you. And I should have mentioned that Mel Wheeler is out of the country representing our city with our sister city of Sapporo in Japan. That's why I get to be the presiding officer. Could you please read item 975, I believe we have a prearranged substitute to speak.
Yes, it is a request of Steve Trujillo to address the council regarding the West Side Public Safety Action Coalition.
Good morning. You have 3 minutes. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Steve Trujillo. I'm here today to introduce to you the West Side Public Safety Action Coalition, it'll be first, also it's the West Side PSAC. As concern about public safety has increased across the city of Portland, a diverse group of stakeholders representing the west side of the city has come together to explore collaborative ways for improving safety and livability for everyone across Multnomah County. The PSAC is a registered Oregon nonprofit and an established board of officers and standing committees. The mission of PSAC is to be a voice for the community, to interact with residents, government, nonprofits, local businesses, and support programs to reduce crime and create a safe, clean, and welcoming Portland. Our goals include the following: to achieve increased funding for jail beds, to reduce the revolving door that often puts often violent offenders immediately back on the streets. We aim to ensure to have offender accountability and access to justice for victims, to promote clear guidance and direction for law enforcement and enforce ordinances and laws deemed as a community priority, and to support effective efforts to establish a compassionate avenue to manage the rising drug epidemic, and establish the support for more effective aftercare and wraparound services for those accessing drug treatment. All of these are multifaceted challenges, and we hope to build partnerships with other organizations to coordinate efforts to manage public safety concerns. We also intend to focus on data and research to inform and support best practices for effecting sustainable change. West Side PSAC represents neighborhoods and other communities working together to advance agency and dignity for all. We hope to serve as a model for the entire county to be things safer, vibrant, and more comfortable for everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much. Next item, please.
Item 976, request of Evelyn Moyo to address the council regarding safety issues in the city.
Morning.
Welcome.
My name is Evelyn Moyo, and I would like to address what I feel is a deteriorating situation in Portland. I was born here. I've lived here pretty much all my life. I teach public high school, and I would like to be able to at least walk on my street to and from my car in a safe manner. Portland used to be pristine, safe, friendly, and it's none of that anymore. It's not good for business, it's not good for the residents, and it's not good for people.
Did we know?
Yeah.
Oh, he's out of the country.
I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. I think that's a D. White.
Sorry. I'm sorry, right now.
Thank you. And it's not good for the people who are living on the streets. they're in a terrible situation. It's not kind to them, and it's not good for us either. I think that the Portland police have been pretty much castrated of their power. I am actually one of the people with Alan Graff who conducted a lawsuit years ago against the Portland police, but the pendulum has swung so far to the left that it is not working out for any of us. And I would like somebody, some people, something to happen so we can clean this up, make it safe for everyone, for street people and for us. Thank you.
And can I, since you didn't use all your time, I should
Commissioner
just
Fish.
jump in for 1 second.
Yeah.
I had lunch yesterday with a downtown developer who said that he is often in social settings where people express concerns about the very things that you mentioned. And his response is, okay, I'll make you king or queen for a day. Tell us
I can't tell you.
what we should be doing that we're not doing. So
I can tell
because
you.
you have a minute and a half left, I'll
Thank
give you an
you.
opportunity to tell us what you recommend we do differently.
Thank you, I shall. So obviously, what we are doing is not working for anyone. What I would do is make it easy for people to get off drugs that want to, get off meth who want to, give them work, do something, education, something. Don't just put them back on the streets, because it's going to never stop if you do that. There has to be something, either say, you must get rehabilitated, you have to clean up, but you can't just go back on the streets. It's not okay for them, it's inhumane. There has to be some kind of program for people to get well again, or at least halfway well, something. Because, like I said, just putting them back on the streets is not working. Portland is not physically or fiscally capable of just setting up little houses everywhere. That's not going to make people better by just handing out more and more things. They have to get help, real help.
So if I can just let you know that there is a large community conversation going on right now about how we can generate quite a lot of money to provide services. And I think what you're talking about is making sure that someone who's addicted gets the treatment, gets a bed somewhere.
And also who has mental illness.
Making sure people get services they need. It's going to take a lot of resources, and we have, we're not getting a lot of resources from the state or the federal government to help with this. We're also, as you probably know, we have some, our ranking as a state in terms of access to services for people battling addiction is very poor. But the good news is there is a broader conversation about taking this moment and generating some dollars so that people who would have the choice of treatment if they chose. So if you would leave your contact information with my office down here, I'll make sure that that we keep you posted on that conversation, because I think you will be able to support it.
Yes.
I'll have to dig a little deeper, but I think there is a path forward that's humane and also provides services people need. And, so I'd like to.
But
keep you
Portland
posted.
needs to be safe for everyone, not, you know.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to correct a couple of things. Portland Police Bureau is lacking 100 positions. It is
You want me to please
Ma'am,
thank you?
I am talking now, your time has been completed. Again, Portland Police Bureau is down over 100 officers. It has been challenging to find people who actually want to be police officers in the city of Portland, and that's for a variety of reasons. Just like the variety of people who find it hard to be able to work, find a place to live, and live a thriving life in Portland, the people who are on our streets run the gambit. And I'm offended when people paint them all with one brush, like they're all addicted, they're all this, they're all that. Every individual you talk to has an individual story.
Absolutely.
And I can tell you that from where I have influence, I am creating what's called the Portland Street Response. That will be a more humane approach to engaging people, but for Grace would be I, who are living on the street. And so it's important that we not assume that we know what people's lived experience is, and that we actually talk to them. And
I
so-
do. I live by
so,
the
ma'am,
steel
your time
bridge
is up.
and I had 3 minutes.
Your
I
time-
didn't have
ma'am.
time to discuss every single
Thank you. I just wanted to come back to the record because the police commissioner is out of the country. And I think it's not appropriate to leave on the record that somehow the police have been, what did you call them? Defanged.
That was their decision, not hers.
That's totally not true.
They could have easily
Well, the
moved
police
to another
officers every single day
time when he
decide
was
whether
here.
they're gonna take a call or not, right? I keep asking, well, why didn't you do this instead of that? And they don't have a good answer, right? So it is a much more complicated situation than where you're able to articulate in 3 minutes. And I just wanted to clear some of the back it up. Thank you so
Thank you.
much for being.
Thank you.
Say hi to Alan for me.
I will. Thank you very much. Next item, please.
Item 977, request of Dean White to address council regarding the failure of the Water Bureau to deliver safe drinking water to its customers.
Good morning.
Good morning, my name is Dee White. Even after the Flint lead crisis in 2014, and even after Newark, New Jersey's recent lead crisis, Portland Water Bureau is still allowing a potent neurotoxin to leach into our drinking water while they slow walk a risky fix that's 3 years away. It is well known that even at low levels, lead is a potent, irreversible neurotoxin that's especially damaging to expectant mothers and children's developing brains. Groundbreaking research at OHSU found a link between lead exposure and ADHD. Why does this matter here? The Portland Water Bureau is the only utility in the country granted permission 22 years ago by their regulator, the Oregon Health Authority, to not follow the EPA's lead and copper rule, otherwise known as the LCR. Instead, the Water Bureau crafted their own regulation and called it the LHRP. OHA gave it their blessing, and it still stands today. This outdated Portland-only regulation focuses on mitigating lead paint in lieu of properly treating corrosive water and maintaining our pipes. Moreover, after decades of this unproven regulation, there is no data, no findings, nothing to show that the Portland Water Bureau has minimized lead exposure in our homes, schools, parks, and businesses. Nothing. If the Portland Water Bureau had been following the federal lead law, like the cities on this chart, Portland's lead levels would be significantly lower. So on this chart, Portland and Gresham are in the middle there. They're the two tall ones. Gresham is a Water Bureau customer. Seattle got to work decades ago. Newark is handing out free water filters and replacing damaged pipes. Our water officials simply chat up the water at the same time they blame customers if they find lead at their taps. You claim transparency, and yet no one knows about your Portland-only regulation that's broken and that continues to endanger public health. The public also remains in the dark about buying an $800,000 job shack on today's agenda for the massive filtration plant being sold to us for crypto, but now apparently it's for wildfires. Project costs just went up an obscene 142% because of the Water Bureau's gross lack of transparency. How can we trust you are delivering safe, affordable, life-sustaining drinking water when omissions and an opaque process is standard operating procedure? In other words, what else have we been misled about?
If anybody is concerned about lead in their water, you can go call 823-4000 for a free lead testing kit, and then I always run my tap water for 2 minutes anyway. Thank you very much. Next item, please.
Item 978, request of Rachel Davies to address council regarding code 3.96.
Good morning.
My name is Rachel Davies. I'm the chair of the Preston Kenilworth Neighborhood Association. We support the Committee 3.96's necessary work. The strength of our city lies in its diversity of voices coming together and learning to work in harmony. We agree that city code should provide equal access for all residents to be involved in shaping city affairs and have access to city bureaus regardless of the avenue that they choose. Preston Kenilworth is one of the poorest parts of Southeast Portland. We have multiple low-income housing complexes. Half our grade school kids qualify for free or reduced price lunches, and we have a high percentage of renters. We are also home to immigrants and refugees from all over the world. Our neighborhood is quiet and has low participation in city affairs. Folks struggling to meet basic needs don't want to come to meetings about land use planning or new construction projects. But when a contractor next door is flinging asbestos siding on the ground without abatement, or an unpermitted Airbnb repeatedly causes issues for an entire block, people come to us for help. And because we know who to call and we will advocate for them. Neighborhood associations are the only avenue that many poorer neighborhoods have to make their voices and concerns heard. And the Preston Kenilworth Neighborhood Association has gone defunct in the past. It was only with the help of paid Southeast Uplift staff that it is active again and can advocate for our neighbors. We are concerned that removing neighborhood association structure from city code will not create more equal representation as intended, but instead make it easier for groups with more money and resources to dominate city discourse while pushing poorer neighborhoods like mine even further to the margins. To fulfill civic life's mandate and make city code match the city's values, we ask for specific structural details, roles and responsibilities of the office, engagement needs of the community, methods for community groups to gain recognition, clearly defined funding opportunities with achievable methodologies, specific benefits that will be available to recognized and funded groups, clearly stated expectations of funded groups, and avenues for the public to stay informed and have input on things like land use decisions. Providing these details in Code 3.96 will do two things. First, create a sort of regulatory certainty where all community groups know exactly what is expected and what they can gain from engaging with the city. Second, it will ensure that it outlives the current leadership. Relying on administrative rules is insufficient because those can change without public notice or public input and are vulnerable if future leaders hold different priorities. We fear that the current lack of structural detail will result in a less equitable distribution of resources and disproportionately benefit those already sealed in navigating the existing social and political power structures. Neighborhoods like mine could go defunct again and would be left out entirely. In order for an equitable system to have staying power, details and structures must be included in City Code Chapter 3.96. We feel that this is the only way to ensure that Portland ends up with a civic engagement system that matches its values. And I want to thank you all for, I know you've all put a lot of time into this particular issue.
Thank you. Commissioner Petty.
Thank you for coming today and giving really helpful feedback. And although it is not, although you have concerns, you haven't propagated any misinformation, which is what's been going on for months now. It's been really challenging. I want to invite you to the November 14th council meeting. It's going to be held in the evening at SEI, where we'll be giving a presentation on the whole process, where it stands, how we're going to move forward. And I assure you that the fears that you have are the absolute opposite of what we are trying to accomplish. But I know that there are a lot of questions, and we need to answer them moving forward.
Thank you. Next item, please.
979, a request of Gloria Bouchard-Zader to address council regarding houseless pods on North Richmond Street in St. John's.
Good morning.
My name is Gloria Bouchard-Zader. I'm a resident of St. John's. I was born in Emmanuel Hospital, graduated from Roosevelt High School and Portland State University. I taught journalism and women's studies in China for 8 years and South Korea for 4 years. I came home to St. John's in 2010. It is my forever home. Now, I volunteer at Oregon Public Broadcasting, James John Elementary School, and the St. John's Neighborhood Association. St. John's Neighborhood Association just had a brand new election. A whole new board ran and won, hands down. We had 15 brand new members. This is what we call community organization. I am here today. I came by bus and Max. I have a hop card to voice my concern and the neighborhood association's concern of a homeless camp village on North Richmond Avenue. We are not against having a homeless camp village in St. John's, just not on North Richmond. This site is a half a block from James John Elementary School, a half a block from the St. John's Public Library, and next to a Montessori preschool and a 2-year college called Wayfinding, plus the 110-year-old St. John's Bachelor's Club, which relies on building rentals to continue in existence. These buildings are all on either North Richmond, North Charleston, North Lombard, and North Central. This is not a suitable location for a homeless camp or village. From my understanding of the history of St. John's, the property in question was deeded to a church to be developed as a playground for local families. It has trees on it that are over 80 years old. Please reconsider this proposal. It is not good for the community. It's not good for our children. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Carl, have any items been pulled from the consent agenda, please?
Yes, item 9A2.
We'll vote on the remainder of the consent, please call roll.
Daly.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Hardesty. Aye. Fritz.
Aye. It's after 9:45, so we can do our first time certain. Please read that item.
Proclaim November 1st and 2nd, 2019 to be Day of Dead.
Thank you. On behalf of the City of Portland, the Mayor and myself, I thank Maria Garcia, the invited speakers, all the invited speakers, Jordan Martin from the Mayor's Office and Yesenia Carrillo from my office for their roles in producing this Day of the Dead proclamation, the first of its kind. I thank them for their collaboration on this item. This proclamation is a celebration of the culturally rich and diverse practices and traditions of the Mexican community and Latinx population at large here in the City of Portland. I truly appreciate the work done by those assembled here today and their willingness to share, educate, and welcome us into the richness of their culture, which is a major contribution to the fabric and environment of our beautiful city. The Day of the Dead is a 2-day holiday that reunites the living and dead. Families create offerings to honor their family members that have passed. These offerings, their families' prayers, and the celebration of their life on earth are believed to encourage visits from the departed souls. Day of Dead is a rare holiday for celebrating life and death. It is unlike any holiday where mourning is exchanged for a celebration. Day of Dead is not Mexican Halloween, as it's sometimes mistaken to be because of the time of the year. And the Mexican community members are not the only ones to celebrate Day of Dead. It is a widely celebrated holiday all over the world. In fact, many communities celebrate All Souls Day during the same time as Day of Dead. To learn about this tradition, I'd like to introduce our speakers to come forward. Maria Garcia, organizer of the Mexican Culture Promoter. Marta Beatriz Navarro Parada, consul in charge of the Mexican Consulate in Portland, Oregon. Eduardo Cruz, artist and performer. And then they'll be followed by Christian Barrios, artist, and Jose Luis Terran, professor of Mayan language and leader of the Mayan community of Portland. Welcome. Who would like to start?
Buenos días, good morning. I am Maria Garcia, and today I'm here speaking as a cultural promoter and organizer of Dia de los Muertos 2019 at Portland Art Museum and other cultural institutions. Day of Dead is a Mexican celebration where we honor the memory of our ancestors and departure of our loved ones. I was born and raised in Mexico City, a very cosmopolitan city where the old world of the Aztec Empire resists to die, and the beautiful Spanish architecture is a constant reminder of two worlds that collide. As it is today, 2019, more than 500 years after the Spanish Conquista, where our native peoples were subjected to a new religion, government, and language, we continue to suffer the vestige of abuse of power, white privilege, disposition, and injustice in the workplace, marginalization, and bullying in schools to our children. I have witnessed unjust imprisonment of my countrymen for many times, not knowing how to speak English and not having the resources to defend themselves. Despite all these and many other difficulties, the Mexican community continue living, continue producing, continue existing, as well as the struggle to defend what is ours. Now, we fight against a government that sees us as a social burden, as criminals and harmful people. We want to be seen as people who contribute to the economy in the work area, in the fields, in the food and beverage industry, in the executive and professional arenas as well. But overall, culturally. For me, it has always been an honor to recognize myself as a Mexican woman, and as a community advocate I have seen the need to organize and promote quality cultural events that speak highly of the beauty of our culture. It is important for me that the local authorities of the city where I live recognize Day of Dead as a local cultural celebration, because in doing so, it is recognizing the Mexican community who are present in Oregon and are not planning on leaving. On the contrary, we are growing roots, seeing our kids born here. Celebrating cultural events dignifies communities, elevates their narrative, and lifts up self-esteem socially damaged by the abuse of power that reflects in cultural ignorance. I invite Mayor Wheeler and all commissioners to learn about our celebration and participate as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your addition.
Thank you very much. My name is Beatriz Navarro, I'm the consul in charge of the Consulate of Mexico here in Portland. We really appreciate this proclamation because, as Maria mentioned, this is part of the Mexican culture. The Mexican citizens or the Mexicans origin people that lives in Portland, it's really important for us. And we really appreciate this first proclamation for this tradition of our people, and it's a universal tradition. It's part now of the whole humanity, and I just want to mention that everybody can visit our Ofrenda de Muertos at the consulate. That will be for 2 weeks from the 1st of November. And also this year we organize a second ofrenda in the Children's Museum. It's particular for children's, and the children can visit that ofrenda especially for them at that museum. It's the first time that we are collaborating with them. And I really congratulate Maria to have this opportunity to do these activities this year, and thank you to the city and to the mayor for this proclamation.
We're honored by your presence, Madam Consul. Would you like to tell the viewers at home where is the Mexican consulate here in Portland?
Where is the Mexican consulate?
Yes,
It's is 35. It's in 12th Avenue, 3501.
The cross street is Jefferson, right?
At the corner of 12th Avenue and Jefferson Street is the consulate.
Yes.
We have 20 years there, and the ofrenda will be at the entrance of the consulate. Everybody can walk and visit our ofrenda for those 2 weeks.
Thank you so much for your
You're
invitation.
welcome.
And most of us actually don't know our address when we're put on the spot.
As quickly as I can.
Well, hello everybody. Thank you, Beatriz. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Christian, and Maria, my wife. And thank you to the city of Portland for allowing us to celebrate officially the Day of the Dead, which is a two-day celebration. So now I'm here to just point out some benefits of celebration, that celebration. And well, the first benefit that I'm going to point out about this beautiful celebration is values, human values. It's going to offer a lot of different ways so people can experience other culture that is just right here. It's been here for a long, long time. But some people, probably are too busy and they've been ignoring it. So we're gonna educate people with this type of celebrations, with not only the ofrenda at the Consulado Mexicano, but also in places like OHS, right? The Oregon Historical Society, the Portland Art Museum, and other places. And Maria has been doing different activities here, and they're educating people. So this is gonna just bring a lot of values and principles to our communities. And it's going to also promote health through good emotions, good experiences, good food. Because celebrating the Day of the Dead is not only bringing a bunch of candy, offering a bunch of candy to the children. We're going to offer real food. That is so hard, to get real food these days. So Maria has been doing a great job with that too. Also, it's going to bring something very important, that's understanding. The understanding of what life is. It's going to be a lot easier if we understand what dying is. And our ancestors, they figure out that it's just a transformation. That is really just the end of a cycle and the beginning of another one. They believe that we were like caterpillars. And then once we go through that transformation, we will turn into light, so it was a beautiful concept of honoring life, because we know that there's something beautiful after that transformation. So a better understanding of dying will provide a better quality of life for everybody. And then another benefit I'd like to point out is this is going to unite, because this is not a Mexican celebration. As Maria mentioned, this celebration with different names is celebrated many places in the world, and there's a lot of similarities. And we always like to argue and fight and point out our differences, but never our similarities. So it's time for us to change that, so everybody, it doesn't matter if you're purple, green, or red, everybody can celebrate the Day of the Dead. Everybody can honor their ancestors. So this is going to offer a better opportunity for understanding that. And then it's going to unite us. So hopefully this starts right here in the city of Portland, but hopefully this spreads all over. Thank you so much as an artist, as a performer, as a musician. I'm just going to say that we will do our best to offer all these things that I just pointed out to our communities and to deliver this message of union. We need to unite so we can all move ahead together. This beautiful celebration of the Day of the Dead, it's going to be something beautiful that you don't want to miss. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Day.
I have a question. First of all, thank you for the invitation. I love this time of year. I love all of the traditions surrounding it, and I particularly love Day of the Dead. But as someone who doesn't share your cultural heritage, I'm wondering if you can tell me how I can respectfully honor and participate without culturally appropriating or without offending people who's on that culture.
And I really appreciate for your question, because that's a question that I have encountered in several places. And I'm deeply grateful for the community to be respectful to our language and our celebration. And I believe the first step is to participate, come to our events, ask, It is fine. We want people to ask us what we're doing, why we're doing it. That's why I'm organizing these events, because they're not just fiestas. I'm putting a cultural program together so our own community members, our new generation of Mexicans, non-Mexicans, Spanish speakers can understand our origins. So that's why Eduardo says it's for everybody. So come please to our celebration so you can understand and then talk about it. That's a great way to start being part of our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was Maria Garcia, Marta Beatriz, Navarro Parada, and Eduardo Cruz. And our next three speakers are Christian Barrios, artist, and Eduardo Miranda, who is their paid substitute. So, that's short. They will introduce themselves. Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Christian Barrios, I'm an artist and I'm a creator, and thank you for having us here. Thank you guys. The importance of the Day of the Dead is not only the 3,000 years before the conquest, the mix of the two cultures, two different worlds. It is so many things as a cultural respect, and as an artist it's really important. Now that we have something for the humanity. As few years ago, it was Patrimony of the Humanity, not only for the Mexicans, but for Colombia, Nicaragua, Salvador, for so many other countries that have been celebrating that for thousands of years. It's the respect of the living, but also the respect of the dead and of our ancestors. We celebrate that to bring all of the memories, not only for us, but for everyone. As we've been seeing last year for a museum, hundreds of people getting in and out to celebrate, to learn, and to know not only of the face of the Catrina painting as Posada did once, and Diego Rivera put it on the mural immortalizing the new era and the new way to see the dead, but also to have something we can share to the world and have a communion and have something that we can do together. And I'm really happy to be here and to see the Day of the Dead is my favorite holiday also. I love it, I love the food, I love all of the symbolic things that we have on the ofrenda, the flowers, the food, everything else, but the community getting together in a good way. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Eduardo Miranda. I am from Mexico. I'm born in a small village called San Martin Duraznos in the Mixteca Baja region of the state of Oaxaca. I am an active Mixteco speaker, which is my native language here in my village. I'm here to share with you a little bit about the Day of the Dead celebration in my village. The Day of the Dead is one of the most important festivals for us. We take 2 days to honor those who have passed away from our families. We dedicate those 2 days to offer them their favorite food and drinks, to pray for their souls. But also, we dedicate those 2 days to spend time in family and remember those persons who were special. But most important, we think that we can dedicate those 2 days to honor those first settlers from our cities, from our towns, the first people who lived there. Because it is important for us to know where we're from in order to know where you're going to. All of us, our kids, our families, we are trying to let them know that we should preserve all the values from our ancestors in order to have a good community and live in peace how they lived before. So, why is it important for us to celebrate it in Portland? Because we believe that no matter where are you living, you have family that is no longer with you. they're special for you. And that is the most respectful way for us to remember them with their favorite food, with their favorite drinks, but also with the family. And remember that those people that are no longer with you are going to be with you all your life. Thank you.
Oh, you want me to read the proclamation? Okay. Wish me luck here. So I'll now read the proclamation and then we'll take a photograph with everybody. Whereas Day of the Dead is one of the most distinct celebrations in Mexico that has transcended time. Day of Dead shares the ethnic and cultural plurality of Mexico that has been enriched through centuries with the contributions of more than 60 indigenous groups that have resided across the Mexican nation. After the Spanish conquest, the indigenous communities continued to celebrate through the struggles of colonialization. European culture left a lasting imprint on traditions and beliefs in Mexico, forever establishing Day of Dead as a celebration of life and cultural fusion. And whereas Day of Dead is a celebration of the transitorial return to earth of their loved ones, heart, friends and family that departed before us, and brings the Mexican and non-Mexican communities to get closer together by celebrating, being and creating a time to remember ancestors. The festivities begin the first week of October and continue through early November, which coincides with the season of the harvest, dedicated to share with ancestors the benefits of first fruits. This celebration is an opportunity to share cultural values in a way that is educational and inclusive. These days are celebrated as a cultural presence across the United States and in Portland, Oregon. And whereas Day of Dead was recognized in 2008 by the United Nations Education, Scientific and Cultural Organization as a significant cultural expression of the indigenous peoples, and as a part of the masterwork of oral and intangible patrimony of humanity. And whereas 2017 data from the Institute of Mexicans Abroad states that the main groups of indigenous communities from Mexico and Oregon are Michoacan, Guanajuato, Oaxaca, Nayarit, Guerrero, and Mérida. And whereas the representation concerning the dead have given way to a symbolic and ritual architecture that is expressed in an infinite amount of creative works, handcrafts, and ephemeral artwork, giving the world works of singular value, such as the production of Jose Guadalupe Posada, creator of La Catrina, popularized eventually by Diego Rivera's art. And whereas altars are built for past loved ones by family members and friends. Altars include a picture of the departed one, marigold flowers, also known as cempasúchil, or flower of the dead, representing the fragility of life, and candles of different colors. Yellow, representing the strength of life. Purple, representing the Christian mourning. White, representing the light, innocence, and purity. And black, referring to the pre-Hispanic religion Tutilan, the place of darkness, and Mictán, the place of the dead ones. Another important element of the altar is the sweet tradition pastry called Pan de Muerto, that according to National Institute of Mexican Anthropology and History, this sweet bread has colonial roots inspired in pre-Hispanic rituals. Its round shape, representing a skull, the four phalanges are exclusive to human bones and tears of the loved ones still alive. They are positioned as a cross representing the four cardinal points, honoring different gods. Quetzalcoatl, Tlaloc, Quitutexpec, and Tezcatlezpuca. The anise flavor refers to the memories of the deceased one. This serves as a time for reflection and remembrance. And whereas the Mexican community in Portland is alive and is here celebrating community, Day of the Dead is understood as a tradition rather than the ending of life. Now therefore I, Commissioner Amanda Fritz, on behalf of Ted Wheeler, Mayor of the City of Portland, Oregon, the City of Roses, do hereby proclaim November 1st and 2nd, 2009, to be Day of Dead in Portland and encourage all residents to observe this day. You guys read and sign it now?
Yes, thank you.
And before I do that, I just want to invite everybody to come on November 1st from 5 to 9 at PNCA, and November 2nd from 2 to 9 p.m. at Oregon Portland Air Museum. I'm sorry. We have a Facebook page called Free Community Celebration, Day of Dead, and all the details are there. Considerando Día de los Muertos es una de las celebraciones más distintivas en México que ha trascendido el tiempo. Día de Muertos comparte la pluralidad étnica y cultural de México que se ha enriquecido a través de los siglos con las contribuciones de más de 60 grupos indígenas que han habitado a lo largo de México. Después de la conquista española, las comunidades indígenas han continuado la celebración a través de su propia resistencia cultural. La cultura europea ha dejado una huella duradera en las tradiciones y creencias en México, estableciendo para siempre el Día de los Muertos como una celebración de vida y fusión cultural y considerando Día de Muertos como la celebración del retorno transitorio a la tierra de los familiares y seres queridos fallecidos. Esta tradición reúne a la comunidad mexicana y no mexicana a celebrar la vida y recordar a los antepasados. Las festividades comienzan la primera semana de octubre y continúan hasta los principios de noviembre, que coincide con la temporada de la cosecha, dedicada a compartir con los antepasados el beneficio de los primeros frutos. Esta celebración es una oportunidad para compartir valores culturales de una manera educativa e inclusiva. Estos días enmarcan la fuerte presencia cultural en los Estados Unidos y en Portland, Oregon. Y considerando Día de Muertos ha sido reconocido por la Organización de las Naciones Unidas para la Educación, la Ciencia y la Cultura, UNESCO, en el año 2008, como una expresión cultural y significativa de los pueblos indígenas y como parte de la obra maestra del patrimonio oral e intangible de la humanidad. Y considerando, en base a datos recaudados por el Instituto de Mexicanos en el Exterior, IME, en el año 2017, los principales grupos étnicos de México que habitan en Oregón provienen en su mayoría de los estados de Michoacán, Guanajuato, Oaxaca, Nayarit, Guerrero y Yucatán. Y considerando el alto número de elementos que componen esta festividad, el Día de Muertos ha dado paso a una arquitectura simbólica y ritual que se expresa en una cantidad infinita de obras de arte, artesanías y obras de arte efímeras, dando al mundo obras de valor singular, como la producción de José Guadalupe Posada, creador de la Catrina, popularizada eventualmente por el arte de Diego Rivera. Y, considerando los altares, son construidos para recibir a los seres queridos, familiares y amigos. Los altares incluyen una imagen del difunto, flores de caléndula o cempasúchil, flor de muerte, que representan la fragilidad de la vida, velas de diferentes colores, amarillo, que representa la fuerza de la vida, púrpura, que representa el duelo cristiano, blanco, que representa la luz, inocencia y pureza, y negro, refiriéndose a la religión prehispánica, Acliyan, el lugar de la oscuridad, y Mictlán, el lugar de los muertos. Otro elemento importante para el altar es el pan de muerto, que según el INA, Instituto Nacional de Antropología e Historia de México, este pan dulce tiene raíces coloniales, inspiradas en rituales prehispánicos. Tiene forma redonda, representando un cráneo. Las 4 canillas son los huesos humanos y las lágrimas de los seres queridos que aún están vivos. Se colocan como una cruz, representando los 4 puntos cardinales, honrando a diferentes dioses, Quetzalcóatl, Tlaloc, Xipetutec y Tezcatlipoca. El sabor de anís se refiere a los recuerdos del difunto. Este tiempo de celebración invita a la reflexión y el recuerdo de los que ya no están con nosotros. Y, considerando, la comunidad mexicana en Portland está llena de vida, presente y vibrando de alegría, celebrando sus tradiciones. El Día de Muertos se entiende como otra etapa de la vida en lugar de su finalización. Ahora, por lo tanto, yo, Ted Wheeler, alcalde de la ciudad de Portland, Oregon, por la presente proclamo que el día 1 y 2 de noviembre de 2019
serán alusivos al Día de Muertos en Portland y invito a todos a los residentes a observar estos días.
Gracias. Do any of my colleagues want to say anything? Commissioner Hardesty?
Thank you, Madam President. That does have a nice ring, Madam President. I say that quite a few times when possible. What a wonderful tradition when we honor our ancestors and center them and making sure that we don't forget the lessons that we learned from them, that our children actually remember that they have been influenced by the generations that have come before. I am so proud to be part of a city council that honors traditions that aren't necessarily traditions that we have been familiar with as people born in the U.S. and people with one language. But I am proud that I live in a city and I'm on a city council where we honor a host of traditions, and happy to be supporting this tradition today. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you all.
Thank you very much to all of us, because thank you, Maria Garcia, for your leadership in this. Thank you again to Yesenia Carrillo on my staff and Jordan Martin from the Mayor's office. Maria has organized an event in the atrium from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. this afternoon. The public is welcome in City Hall. So let's take a picture, please.
Bob, if you can, I'd still like you to do a First Amendment audit on Multnomah County Road Patrol. Go and drive, go down, check out the boathouses with the boats, just your standard what you do. So if you get some time, I'd appreciate it. If not, it's all good too.
Okay.
Okay, fair enough.
I was thinking about doing an audit on the Mexican embassy.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
See, the thing is, the sidewalk outside is public property.
Right.
So filming in, I'm not sure what Mexico's thing is, but I'm sure they could get hot.
It could get interesting there, yeah, because it's not like here on how they might deal with it. You're talking going all the way to Mexico, right? Is that what you meant?
No, I'm talking about the embassy here.
Where is that located?
12th and Jefferson.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, you would fall under our law, so I don't see any problem. You can film anything from a public sidewalk that you can visually see with your camera.
Right.
So they can close their windows.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, I'm pleased to introduce this next item. Today we will be voting towards $631,321 for Cycle 2 of the Cannabis Social Equity Grant Program. We'll hear from staff from the Cannabis Office as well as some of our community partners who have been recommended to receive funding. Before we begin, however, I'd like to take a second to
We're going to
recognize
give the cannabis a grant.
last time before council in his current capacity. He's recently accepted a position at Metro. Brandon, I want to thank you for your steady leadership over the past 4 years and congratulate you on your new adventure. Cannabis policy is largely uncharted territory for local government, but you've risen to the challenge and we appreciate all that you have contributed. With that, I'd like to welcome Brandon Goldner, Kimmy Iuka, and Jeanette Ward Horton to the table.
Madam President. I know, we get mixed up all the time. I was gonna say, can't we pass a resolution to prevent Brandon from actually going to Metro?
I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm excited and also sad. This work has been incredible and difficult and super meaningful, and thank you all for your support in that, and for my colleagues too. So as you know, my name is Brandon. I supervise City of Portland's cannabis program. I'm here to talk today, just briefly before getting it over to our policy coordinator, Kimi Wayoka, to talk a little bit about the social equity grants program and give a brief overview of year one of that program. So if we could begin with the first slide. So the Cannabis Social Equity Grants, it's a tool for restorative justice, community reinvestment, and wealth creation in communities that were impacted by cannabis prohibition, specifically Black and Brown Americans in America, from law enforcement to the judicial system through the laws that were made. Cannabis prohibition disproportionately impacted those people and those families. And in my view, the city has an obligation to do what it can to repair some of that harm. And the Cannabis Social Equity Grants is a small step in that direction. And so that is why we are here today. The Cannabis Social Equity Grants also align to the City of Portland's comprehensive plan. We talk about economic prosperity and equity and resilience, and it also aligns with the Bureau's 5-year racial equity plan and the citywide racial equity goals. So again, the entire City of Portland, all of you commissioners, folks who live here, our staff, our community understand the importance of this work. With that, talking a little bit about the first year of the Cannabis Social Equity Grants, and just for some context, Portland voters passed a ballot measure in 2016 that authorized a 3% local tax on recreational cannabis sales. The authorized uses of that revenue were threefold, as summarized in these bullets: for drug and alcohol education and treatment, for public safety investments, and then for support for small businesses, especially women-owned and minority-owned businesses, that language in the ballot measure, and economic opportunity and education to communities disproportionately impacted by cannabis prohibition. And I do want to say thank you to Commissioner Fritz, whose efforts it was that that bullet point got into the ballot measure. And again, we all understand how important that is. Some background on year one of the grants. And to be clear, that the first year of those grants were facilitated by OMF's Grants Office and by Prosper Portland. Now that we're going to be talking about year two in just a moment, that's being facilitated by Civic Life, but the first year was not. There was a community survey that was done to identify priority areas for reinvestment of that cannabis tax revenue, as convened by Commissioner Fritz and Commissioner Udaley's office. And there was a steering committee that got together to decide, okay, so that third bullet point, the community reinvestment, the social equity efforts, what specific types of programs and efforts should that tax revenue fund? So the result of those processes, on the next slide, oh, you have it there, thank you, were 3 priority areas: expungement and record clearing, workforce development, and small business development and technical support. And there again, you see that a portion of that money was managed by the Grants Office, and a portion of that money was managed by Prosper Portland. So the selection process for that portion of the money that was managed by the Grants Office, that $350K for the expungement and record clearing and workforce development, I'm going to talk briefly about that because it's that portion of the revenue that most closely reflects what we're calling year two of the Cannabis Social Equity Grants that we are here to discuss today, authorizing. The process there, we had 9 applicants in that first year. The selection committee recommended 3 projects for funding, and those projects were approved by council in August of 2018. Metropolitan Public Defender for the record clearing and expungement portion received $154,000. Green Hop is a cannabis retailer that has a Green Hop Academy with cannabis-specific workforce program. They received $95,000, and then POIC and Rosemary Anderson High School received $100,000 for their construction pre-apprenticeship program. Now, all 3 of those organizations have representatives here today. They're going to come up and speak a little bit about their efforts. And so they'll be up here in just a moment. For that first year outcomes, all of those projects are on track to meet the outcomes that were identified in the grant agreements, and more than 800 Portlanders have received services as a direct result of those Cannabis Social Equity Grants. And I do want to make mention that in year 2 of the grants, there is very specific language that talks about aggregate data and analyses of demographic information so that in year 2, we know exactly who we are helping with this funding because that's critical. Yes, we want to do good, we want to allocate funding for that purpose, but I believe we really need to know exactly who it is we're helping. So in year 2, that is baked into the grant agreement and is a requirement. So I just wanted to make that point as clear as I could. With that ends my portion on the first year of the grants, and so now I'm going to kick it over to my colleague, Kime Wayoka, to talk about year 2. And one more brief thing, and she didn't want me to do this. I do want to say publicly, Kime has been doing heroic work with this. It is difficult, it's unprecedented. This stuff is new for our bureau, it's new for the city, it's new around the country. And Kime has a level of professionalism and patience and creativity that I wish I had, and I really appreciate her work with this. So with that, I'm giving it over to Kime to talk about year 2.
Thank you. Good morning, commissioners. My name is Kime Wayoka, and I'm the policy coordinator for the city's cannabis program. Forgive me, I'm a little nervous. This is my first time here.
I know, we're pretty scary looking.
Oh, I think it's the table. As Brandon said, our bureau took over administering this grant fund this year for year 2, and it is, needless to say, it has been exciting. Not only did we have a bit of the best timeline that we were aiming for, we also received 3 times the number of applications for the funding as they had in year 1. It threw a bit of a wrench into our planned timeline, but we're here. Yay! Upon the recommendation from our grant review panel, we are here today to propose 6 projects to be funded by the city in year 2. This graphic shows the activities of the year 2 grant making on the timeline. One thing to note that because
My dad's gonna flip.
it was really important for us in year 2 to get this grant aligned with the city's fiscal year. Therefore, it was decided that we would announce this grant as an 8 to 10 month funding cycle in order to align with the city's overall fiscal year timeline. With your approval today, we will be on track for a 9-month funding cycle for year 2. So we started off with a listening session in April. It was a great opportunity for us to introduce ourselves to some of the organizations that are doing the work in these priority funding areas and begin to start to build some community and connections around this work. We threw a pretty broad net out in invitations, and 20 individuals representing 15 different community organizations participated in that listening session and helped us to shape the funding announcement. A link to the summary of that listening session and the action items that resulted from that listening session is available on our website for this grant at www.portlandoregon.gov/cannabistax. We also work closely with the Office of Equity and Human Rights on shaping the final product. The year 2 priority funding areas, $490,000 was allocated in year 2 for expungement and record clearing, workforce development. Those 2 were carried over from year 1, and an additional funding priority area of reentry housing was added for year 2. Prosper Portland again received funds, $210,000, to continue small business development and technical support. Jeanette Van Leeuwen is here to speak more about that piece of work in just a moment. So our selection process, we brought together a review panel of 6 community members and 1 city staff from the Portland Housing Bureau to participate in the review and recommendation process on grants this year. They were not prepared for the volume of work that we gave to them with 32 applications, but they rose to the challenge. and donated more than 230 hours of time to this process. And I'd like to take a moment to thank them and acknowledge that gift. The review panel process included an independent scoring process, which was then followed by an all-day in-person.
I wouldn't call it volunteer. They got paid their wages.
Of the 32 applications received and the 3 million in need that were expressed by those applications, the review panel landed on a final recommendation of 6 projects for funding. And they also recommended that all year 1 projects receive funding for a second year.
Now that's interesting.
We're here today to request approval to fund these 6 projects at $631,321, and we're requesting a retroactive start date of October 1st, 2019 to allow for that 9-month grant cycle. The review panel recommended that the city utilize $141,321 of the currently available fiscal year 1920 funds to allow us to fund the top 6 applications, which did include a second year of funding for the first year grantees. This leaves $758,679 for the fiscal year 1920 cycle, which we will be calling year 3. Projects proposed for continued funding in year 2 are the year 1 grantees, Portland Opportunities Industrialization Center, aka POIC, at Rosemary Anderson High School for their construction pre-apprenticeship program, Metropolitan Public Defender Services for their community coalition record clearing clinics, and Greenhop for their Greenhop Academy. New projects for year 2 are Southeast Works with their Youth Works project, VOS for their Building Economic Power for Day Laborers project, and Constructing Hope for their Building Equity project. Summaries of all these projects are in Exhibit B of the ordinance packet and will also be posted on the grant webpage after final approval. And even better yet, as Brandon mentioned, representatives from all of these organizations are here to speak to their work and share the impact of their work directly with you themselves. The note, one year 2 applicant requested a small scope modification after the review panel process. And it was primarily to increase pay rates for the participants, the pay stipends for the participants. In order to do that, they needed to make a reduction on their internship program, but there's no change to the overall requested amount. So most importantly, what have we learned? Yes, yes.
Thank you, Madam President. Go through this one again, so we're reducing a 10-week internship from 20 participants to 10.
Yes, so their request was to increase the rate for both their apprenticeship program and their internship program to get closer to a living wage for those participants. They are not requesting funds for anything beyond those stipends for participants. They are contributing the other program costs for that. And in order to make those changes, they increase the pay rate for participants. They made a reduction in the number of the 10-week internships from 20 to 10.
And is that still a good value for the money that we're investing in that program? And we're getting half of the participants as compared to what was agreed to?
I believe that is yet to be seen fully, only because we do not have the year 1 outcomes yet, and As we have all spoken to, this is a learning process, and we are working to even better define for ourselves how best to support all of our grantees in meeting our expectations around building wealth and power for these communities that have been most impacted. And so that is part of our process in continuing to improve and refine and shape this grant. So along that line, what we have learned and what we still need to do, we have received, all of these points are based on feedback that we received directly from grantees, applicants, and community members, and also our panelists. So we are continuing to increase our level of support for applicants both before and after the application process. An example of that is everybody who was not recommended for funding this cycle received an offer of a 15-minute one-on-one meeting to discuss the details of their specific application and how that might be strengthened in the next cycle. We are also hosting for year 3 a grant writing workshop as part of the pre-funding announcement opportunities. We will continue to improve our grant making process. There are lots of things that we can do to fine tune and improve the support that we provided for both through the funding announcement and also to the review panelists. Some of the feedback we have gotten and we are already working towards is continuing to seek out strategic opportunities to make upstream changes and investments to even broaden the impact of these funds and increase communication and collaboration across bureaus, as well as looking for policy opportunities aligned with this work. And also to deepen community relationships and engagement around this work. One of the big takeaways from the 50+ conversations that I have had over the last 7 months, I think can be summarized in a statement, not a statement, but a clear statement here that I'm going to try and communicate. One thing that stood out in all of my conversations was this, that work in reparative and restorative justice requires a thoughtful and strategic plan, and that our policymaking needs to be trauma-informed, and we need to be using trauma-informed policy stewardship in partnership with the communities that we intend to serve. Without these things in place, people, processes, power, all of these in all their forms will default to what is familiar. And that will work against us in our work if this truly is our goal with the use of these funds. So we have really taken that feedback to heart, and we are working to identify some clear action items for year 3. We'll hand the microphone off to Jeanette to further discuss.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. Happy to be here. I'm Jeanette Ward Horton. I'm Executive Director of New Leaf Project, and we are receiving funds from Prosper Portland and from the Social Equity Grants ultimately to support the investment into minority and women-owned businesses, minority and women-owned cannabis businesses. So I'm going to share with you just some information about why this is important and some thoughts around how we can think about the future of these grants. So let's start with this fact, because it's important to ground ourselves in this and ensure we're not coming at this from a stereotyped or prejudiced perspective. Many studies have shown that adults across races use cannabis at similar rates. However, we can see in the next 2 slides, this is arrest rates, and the slide after is conviction rates in the state of Oregon. You can see the disproportionate targeting of first African American communities. Second, Native American communities, and I think it's really important to call out what communities we're talking about specifically so that we can understand, as Brandon says, when we start to get visible into who we're impacting, that we're clear we need to be impacting positively through these funds African American communities and Native American communities first and second. Conviction rates, if you move forward, get interesting. You still have trends of African Americans being convicted at higher rates, but Native Americans jump up here. So we've got to keep our lens on both of those communities and ensuring that these funds really impact positively those two groups. If you think Liberal Portland's any different before we move on, it's not. I have arrest records from 2006 to 2014 in Portland, and absolutely African Americans are targeted the most. And the Native Americans are actually arrested at similar rates to their population, but nobody else is for cannabis arrests.
Thank you. I am very curious on this data because I think most people know that Hispanic is not a category where we are collecting data in a way that we can actually add to the demographic information, right? My work in criminal justice has taught me that a lot of times Hispanic individuals are misidentified as being white. And so I'm curious as to, because when you look at the chart, you would think Latino community is not as egregiously impacted, but I would argue with that if that was what we were telling people was so. Anybody else?
I would also add to that if you think about cannabis criminalization over time, that there is also data there that we are actively searching for right now in advance of year 3 to have a sense of the intergenerational impact, and given that the forefront of cannabis criminalization was driven in part by some.
You know, you can just say it, right? From unequal, racially focused criminal justice activity, right?
Yes,
we should
against
not be
Mexican
shy.
American immigrants.
Yes, we should not be shy about actually just saying this is what it was.
Notice the
this
term
is what it
says
still is,
felony
this is what we
conviction,
got a lot of.
Yeah.
because that number would be much higher
So that's why we
of
are
arrests.
focused right
See
now
where I'm
on
going?
taking a
Yeah.
look at over
That's a
time,
conviction.
what does this look like, not just for the past 10 years, but what does it look like for the past 80 years?
Hispanic Americans also, or Latino Americans also get classified as black or white versus Latino, so you're absolutely right, Commissioner Morris. All right, so this is really important for understanding. There's a term called compounded deprivation that a Harvard researcher named Robert Sampson coined that talks about how arrest and conviction really impacts an entire family. It isn't the one individual. The economic impact impacts the mother, the father, the brothers, the sisters, the spouses, the children, and the children of the children. Unfortunately, data is telling us that African Americans are the one group where your children are likely to fare worse than you are economically. And that's not what we want for our communities and for our families and for our cities. The reason for that you can see on this slide, because arrest and incarceration results in all of these other things. You can't get loans for businesses, you can't get loans for schools, you're denied housing in better neighborhoods, et cetera, et cetera. And all of those things lead to this web that then leaves you in a depressed socioeconomic situation that gets worse generationally. So what we do at New Leaf is
No, I just wanted to correct the slide, I'm sorry. If you'll go back, in Oregon, when people are incarcerated, they cannot vote, but the day they get out, they're eligible to vote. I think there's only one state in the United States that people still don't have the right to vote after a conviction. And so, I don't know how you'd want to change that, but I for the sake of accuracy, because I know many people just believe that once you've been incarcerated, you can never vote again. And so we're trying to undo that myth around who can vote and who can't.
Great, thank you. So what we do at New Leaf is understanding these interconnected web that leads to compounded deprivation is we focus specifically on entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship has been shown to be the best way to improve household wealth. 37% of the wealth in the United States is held by entrepreneurs. And African Americans specifically are in the worst positions of entrepreneurship rates. We own the least businesses, and our businesses tend to be the least successful. And it actually gets worse with cannabis businesses that are very hard to fund and that you can't get traditional funding for. So we see a really great opportunity to take the funding that is available through these cannabis taxes and use it to impact directly the best lever for improving household wealth. If it is entrepreneurship, then how can we take that money and create entrepreneurs who are funded to levels that allow them to be successful? So these couple of stats are to further shore up that point. Various studies, and there's one from MIT here and one for the Center for Global Policy Studies that point out that lower levels of success rates or low levels of startup capital are the #1 impact on entrepreneurship success rates. And we can make a direct impact on that. We are making a direct impact on that with our New Leaf grants. Here's an example of that in terms of giving you some year one information about success rates. We have granted several businesses, 2 of which received our quote-unquote large grant of $30,000. And this is an example from one business how they were able to improve their business with that grant. We measure what they do with the money and then how that money impacts the business. And they've been able to hire employees, they've been able to improve their sales, all of which is good for cities. You know, this is the right thing to do, as Brandon said, but this is also good for the city's bottom line. The last thing I want to say is I really want to leave here thinking about year 3 and year 4. Kimye talked about the year 3 grant amount of $741,000 and some change, which is commensurate with the percentages that are being given across the 3 places that Brandon brought up before. We've got money going to police, essentially, as the city audit has pointed out, that the public safety amount is essentially going to police. We have money going to drug rehabilitation, and then we have money going to these communities that have been impacted by the war on drugs. And 80% of the funds are going to police. So I do want to, before I stop speaking, leave with the commission that imbalance is not what the voters intended and not going to address the issue we're trying to address. Giving 80% of funds to police really can only compound the rest in the situation we're trying to reverse. So I'd love to leave in front of the city thinking about the future, rebalancing those distributions.
Thank you. Mayor Wheeler has said that we're going to have a work session in the springtime to discuss that very issue. We're very well aware of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'd like to invite some of the year 1 grantees up to speak to their work.
Welcome.
I'd like to invite POIC, MPD, Metropolitan Public Defenders, and please.
And we can start, just state your name for the record.
Oh man, it is on me. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Thank you guys for having me. My name is Charles Manigo, and I am here on behalf of POIC. I am the pre-apprenticeship coordinator. I run the pre-apprenticeship trades program that we have going on there. And just real briefly, I don't know if you guys are familiar with POIC. We have been a fixture in the community for over 50 years, primarily in the northeast and north part of Portland, where we specialize in primarily getting African Americans and other low income minorities, job placement, education, things of that nature. The reason I am here is to talk about cannabis grant and how important it is to our program. And one of the biggest things that it's been able to do for us is help us with support services, which helps for our retention purposes for our program. Our program is 12 weeks long, and once completion is done from our program, our graduates go into state-accredited apprenticeship opportunities. We've served 52 people approximately. Out of those 52 people, excuse me, I have to look at this. 31 have been African American males, 9 have been Hispanic males, 6 have been African American females, 1 has been a Native American female, 3 have been Hispanic females, and 2 have been Caucasian males. Of those 52, 43 are currently enrolled in accredited state apprenticeship opportunities, and of the 43, 34 are making $31 an hour or more, and the other 9 are making $23 an hour or more. And the reason that is important is because with this cannabis grant, we've been able to help 7 of our folks get driver's licenses, because that's a huge barrier and a huge obstacle that we face. If our folks don't have a driver's license, they may be on out of work list longer than folks who do have driver's licenses. We've helped 4 people with childcare, which is really huge. We pay our folks by the hour, but it's not enough to cover things like childcare, driver's license. We've paid for 4 of our folks auto insurance because of this grant as well. We've pretty much been able to do anything associated with getting our folks to work. And that is huge, because we have a lot of other barriers and obstacles that we have to face from some of the youth that we serve. And it's the demographic that we primarily target. It's no secret that they've been marginally affected by cannabis laws. One young lady, as a matter of fact, was recently, well, not recently, but she was released from prison at the end of last year. She came to us, wanted to be in our program, but she had a lot of barriers. She had recently lost custody of her son because she was in prison. Just her family trajectory was really kind of all over the place, but we were able to reassure her that, we would be able to help her as long as she was helping herself. And because of the cannabis grant, we were able to get her child care, we got her driver's license, set up a bank account. We got her set up with financial literacy classes as well, which is something that we just simply wouldn't be able to take care of if we didn't have access to this money. So I don't want to be too long-winded, and I actually feel like this is kind of a big deal. I feel like I'm on CNN, Oh man, this is huge. Yeah, but we are really appreciative of the cannabis grant. We hope dearly for the life of our program that this is something that will continue.
Charles, I wanted to thank you for being here today. You did great.
Oh, thank you.
And thank you for kind of illuminating the kind of support services that you're providing, because we know that not addressing these barriers is a huge pitfall to a lot of these programs, and it's why we see such poor retention rates. And if you're truly aiming to serve marginalized communities or underserved communities, it's not enough to just say, come get the knowledge. Because they're, as you described, there are a lot of barriers to simply showing up.
Yes, ma'am.
So, very supportive and thrilled to hear about those 43.
Yes, 43.
That's more money an hour than I made before I got this job.
Man.
So
if I was making that amount of money at, we serve the ages between 17 and 24. If I was, 23 years old and I made $30 an hour or more, I don't even know.
It's going to keep working in that profession, right? Commissioner Allison.
Thank you, Madam President. I think the message I'm getting from your presentation, Charles, is having a pot of flexible resources that you can use to address specifically, directly, the barriers that people are encountering is vital to the success of getting people through pre-apprenticeship to a good family wage, union wage employment opportunity.
Yes, ma'am.
And one question I had for you is that if someone was going to try to do this themselves, there's an $80 fee that's paid to the state police. There's a $265 application fee. Do these funds allow you to assist people in expunging their record?
We have other services within the organization that would allow that to happen, yes. Not particularly pre-apprenticeship, but under the umbrella of POIC, absolutely.
I asked that question because clearly there's some professions that with some of these things on your record you would never be able to get into. Clearly the answer is for the state legislature to pass a law that just expunges people's records across the board. We're not there yet, but until we do that, it is important that we provide all the assistance we can directly to folks, because $345 is a lot of money to most people, right? So if you're trying to choose between feeding your family or getting expungement, you're going to feed your family first. So I just want to applaud the work that you're doing and the intentionality around really providing those wraparound supports that help people just focus on getting the training they need for a living wage employment opportunity. Thank you.
Who's next?
Hi, my name is Michael Zhang, and I work at the Metropolitan Public Defender. And just to go off the last comment, Commissioner Hardesty, fees are, as you stated, enormous, and they're actually, in most cases, much more. The $265 filing fee is just per conviction, and the median number of convictions that I would estimate is 3 or 4 at least. And even, you see people with like many more than that convictions. And so in order to expunge someone's whole record, the figure would be like astronomical if there was a fee waiving process in place. In any case, my name is, as I said, Michael Zhang, and I work in the Metropolitan Public Defender's Office in its community law division. And the goal of this division was to establish holistic defense, which is where we would address someone's all of their needs rather than just their need for criminal defense. Our goal is to provide a wraparound civil legal services to people who are or have been involved previously in the criminal justice system. And we believe that by doing so, we can lower barriers to people's reentry into community and into the workforce. In 2018, we received funding from the city of Portland to establish legal clinics throughout the city to assist people in the expungement of past criminal records. A past criminal conviction, as we heard today, can be a person's biggest barrier to gaining employment or housing and even higher education. For many, a prior cannabis-related conviction may be their most significant barrier as well. And as we reform our cannabis laws, we're glad to see that. There's also funding to help people who have been impacted in the past. This year, Community Law Division, through the marijuana grant, and just with its cannabis grant, screened 1,031 individuals, including 351 Black identifying individuals, for expungement eligibility. The criteria for expungement is very complex, and so people are rarely able to understand the law on their own. And so when we're talking about cost, it's not just the cost of filing fees, but in fact, usually people would hire a lawyer to do this, and the lawyer in the Portland area would charge And it's due to the extreme complexity of the law that's what the market rate is set to. And so we've established clinics throughout the local communities within the city of Portland that have historically experienced the greatest effects of mass incarceration. In this past year, we've partnered with the Urban League and the Miracles Club to host monthly clinics. And we've also partnered with Black Lives Matter, Emmanuel Temple Church, to host individual clinics. And we've also participated in community events like Juneteenth and Good in the Hood. We also have monthly clinics with the Portland Alano Club and Bridges to Change, and also held clinics with the Pacific Northwest Council of Water Protectors at its medicine gathering at Oxbow Park, as well as Portland Community College. The demand for our clinics is immense, and the people that I meet with on a daily basis are very grateful for the help that we can provide them. In the next year, with continued funding from the city, we hope to build on our existing relationship. Also, it's noteworthy that Senate Bill 420, which was recently passed, will expedite the expungement process for people with low-level cannabis possession convictions, and we're looking forward to providing relief to these people, where we will have a more expedited process for their expungements. And as we look forward to continuing this work, we hope that the community will see the Metropolitan Public Defender as a stable and reliable partner for providing this kind of service.
Michael, can you tell us roughly how many people you've been able to assist completing an expungement?
Those numbers are in our report that we send quarterly. I have our numbers right now for screening, but we're currently working on our final report. We did submit our third quarter report, but it's about, I would estimate that the number of people that we screen tend to be about like 30% eligible, which is higher than if you were to just find people and like randomly sample people for their eligibility. We tend to 1,031.
Okay, thank you.
For the record, my name is Karanja Cruz. I am the co-owner of Green Hop, co-founder of Green Hop Diversity Health Dispensary. I just want to kind of give you a little bit of context, because everything we're talking about is kind of like reflects or impacts what I experience. Being Black in America is hard. First of all, Green Hop was created just through a sense of bootstrapping, no capital, just two single parents from Portland, Oregon. I want to emphasize being from Portland, Oregon, because the cannabis industry is full of people who are not from Portland, Oregon. So I want to emphasize us being born and raised in Portland, Oregon, also being educators, being in the educational system, and this pretty much bootstrapping, not able to access capital, not able to access loans, be able to start the business. And we started with nothing, and we were able to build it up by ourselves working the business and saving every penny so we could be able to hire our next employee and then the next person. And so literally we started from zero and still are building up with no capital. So it's scary in a sense. We don't have any type of safety net. We just have to keep going to be able to continue to build. The way the grant is set up through an invoice system. So it's hard to be able, just to answer your question with the 20 to 10, it's hard to be able to have the capacity to be able to bring on 10 people or 20 people right away, because we don't have the capital to be able to invoice that after the fact, if that makes sense. However, I was told to talk about community reinvestment and shifting the narrative, so I actually wrote a whole speech. So I'm just going to read the speech and then we can just dialogue if you have any questions from there. But Green Hops programming honors the histories of communities of color, particularly African Americans, cultivating a pipeline that provides a stake in the multi-billion cannabis industry as entrepreneurs, investors, consumers, advocates, and employees. What the city of Portland is doing with the Cannabis Social Equity Program is a model for the nation to see. The purpose of the Cannabis Social Equity Grants is to address the lasting impact of disproportionate cannabis enforcement, impact communities by providing economic opportunities, increasing access to housing, reducing legal barriers for housing, employment, and education. As the cannabis industry is slated to grow nearly $21 billion in 2020, Green Hops Workforce Incubator Program will lay the foundation of an economic shift of low-income families of color while offering Black and brown individuals a unique opportunity to shake off the decades of historical underserved access to job growth and prosperity. Green Hops programming would also specifically help repair the harm caused by disproportionate criminalization. Being a licensed teacher that is currently working with educators and students now, I'm still noticing the school system is not preparing us for today's workforce. Now being on the other side, being a teacher, now being on the other side of providing jobs, we still have a system that is, a school system that is preparing us for the industrial system where we are literally in the digital and technology revolution at the beginning of it. So schools have not transitioned, and I can literally see the reflection of schooling and how it affects the workforce today. So it's quite interesting being on both sides, but we have a lot of work to do. And having programs like this literally helps organizations like Green Hop, who literally started from the ground up, who is bootstrapping everything and literally needs help to be able to provide services.
Is there any questions? I'm going to call our next panel. Chris Kendricks from Southeast.
20,000 served, of which 25% self-attest to prior justice involvement. Funding for YouthWorks will provide education, certification, work experience, occupational training, mentoring, and employment placement services to 40 low-risk youth who are 18 to 24 charged with drug or property crimes living in the City of Portland Neighborhood Prosperity Initiatives. This is including Lentz, Rosewood, Cawley, and J Division Midway. We will deliver services through a positive youth development framework that draws upon research evidence-based practices of the Department of Education, Oregon Youth Development Division, including its 2016 position paper and 2017-19 Juvenile Crime Prevention Guidelines. PYD emphasizes building skills and attitudes important for youth resiliency, capitalizing on individual strengths and assets. A trauma-informed approach will be utilized given that 80% of justice-involved youth have history of trauma. Motivational interviewing will be used to build rapport with clients, tapping into their internal motivation. MI used with the justice-involved population since the 1990s can lead to improved retention, enhanced motivation to change, and reduce offending. Research on justice-involved youth show that lack of employment is one of the biggest predictors of justice system involvement and unsuccessful reentry, and that access to employment and job training can help youth avoid a lifetime of negative justice-related consequences. Southeast Works intends to disrupt that cycle through a hands-on relational program model that will result in positive outcomes for youth. On behalf of the Southeast Works Board of Directors, staff, and youth, I would like to thank you, City Commissioners, for your support in this very important work.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm curious, you've connected drug and property crime folks with that background. Why the property crime connection?
Why the property crime connection? Because I feel like there's a variety of crimes that are out there, but I feel like we're covering all bases of the crimes. It don't matter any crime, anytime that we'll help with.
I guess as it relates to the cannabis funds, right? We're really focused on making sure that the people who've been impacted, but when you talked, you said drug and property crime. So your whole, the organization will work with anybody with a criminal background?
Yes, anybody.
This particular program, however,
and drugs, yes. And drugs, yes. and drugs and property, so we're saying with everybody. That's what we
They can only type
So
in
are
marijuana.
the, so is there a different demographic that has been over-criminalized in property crimes rather than folks who've been over-criminalized with marijuana convictions and how marijuana laws have played out?
People commit property crimes to buy their drugs.
But they have to tie it to that arrest at the time. If they
Yeah.
don't, you can't use grant money.
Right.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Osmani Ochoa. I am Executive Director of WOS Worker Rights Education Project. First, in April, 15 workers went to Legacy Emmanuel to plant trees with the Bureau of Environmental Services. This also brought together Verde, Friends of Trees, and Tricology. There were 2 plantings. One of the workers that participated said, every time I go to that hospital, I would think of those trees that I planted there. The cannabis grant will extend opportunities like this for low-income, houseless, and immigrant workers to work together with city government on meaningful community projects that deepen workers' skills and allow them to be seen and respected for their contributions that they make. We believe we are building a practical training model that will be replicable
See, they're
as
placing
Portland
it in a
Clean Energy
trailer.
Fund picks up steam and trains workers of color to build the city in more sustainable ways. Secondly, the Workforce Development Program came out of a request of the workers to sharpen their skills, and there is a full range of skills development opportunities on site at the Martin Luther King Jr. Worker Center. From work review, language classes, to safety trainings, including OSHA card opportunities, to on-site workshops that have included gardening, restoration, construction, salvage, janitorial, and even recycling plastic for 3D printing. We are working with the Oregon Food Bank, Pacific Northwest Carpenters Institute, Oregon Tradeswomen, Master Gardeners, East Multnomah Soil and Water Conservation District, Portland of Emergency Management, Metro, People, Places, Things, Reuse, and Cascadia clusters. The cannabis grant allows us to continue to bring training partners to the Martin Luther King Jr. Worker Center and provide on-site, hands-on, and popular education-based workshops, and develop the intercultural skills and connections of those organizations as well. Third, a key element of the capacitaciones model we offer is that we're not just training unskilled workers, but we have a model to identify the skills that are already within the worker community. Many of the workers at the Worker Center come to us with skills and for whatever reason are unable to put their capacities to work in the way that they want to. By using our model, we can identify those who have skills and are ready to lead others and help prepare them to whatever their next level is, whether that's matching with more skilled opportunities to getting their contractor's license. This model is flexible and highly customized and can be used by other organizations to track capacity and progress among marginalized groups at our site that includes Latinos, African Americans, and African immigrants, as well as poor whites, people living with mental health and/or addiction, and those formerly incarcerated. To conclude, the cannabis grant was designed to rectify injustices because of racially biased criminalization and enforcement of cannabis laws. Members of our community are among those impacted, and the model has the potential to reach beyond the communities we serve on the corner. On behalf of WOS, we thank the city for the continued opportunity and your commitment to right historic wrongs. Thank you.
Good afternoon, I'm Simon Collins from Constructing Hope in Northeast Portland. We are a 10-week pre-apprenticeship training program that takes people who have no experience working in the construction trades and gives them enough experience to join an apprenticeship so that they can move on to a lasting career that makes a living wage. We primarily work with people coming out of incarceration, focusing specifically on Black and brown men in the Portland area. And we provide a lot of wraparound services for our students. We provide, with partnership with other organizations, referrals for housing, referrals for daycare, referrals for clothing, referrals for tools, referring for boots. We provide boots, we have a food pantry on site, because what we find is when people are coming out of incarceration, they come out with almost nothing. And I think that the best way, I think, to show kind of what we do is to tell the story of one of our students. We had a student whose name was Robert. He had spent 8 years in prison for various drug and property crimes. When he was released from prison, within 2 weeks, he was given custody of his 7-year-old daughter that was born when he went into prison, and he had barely developed a relationship with her, and suddenly he was her full-time caregiver. He had no job, no money, no driver's license, many thousands of dollars in fines, as well as time that he needed to do in community service, and he was overwhelmed. He came into our program. Our program is 10 weeks. It's unpaid, so you have to devote yourself to being there 3 days a week for 10 hours a day. We start at 6:30 in the morning because that's when construction jobs start. So we want people to get the experience of actually having to be at a job site at 6:30 in the morning. He showed up every day. He had perfect attendance. He became a leader in the class. He was just amazing, but he was still homeless, living on somebody's couch with his 10-year-old or with his 7-year-old daughter, and just really struggling. And so with our partners, we reached out through Human Solutions, and he was able to find an apartment. Through a pre-apprenticeship childcare initiative, he was able to get childcare for the time that he was in the program. He was then able to extend that childcare through DHS to be able to have childcare for a year. He got into an apartment, got his tools, got his boots, got his job. The day he graduated from our program, he got a call from the iron workers, and he started work a week later, making $22.31 an hour. He's been working steadily since then, and is in fact getting custody of his second child very soon, because he's actually become something he thought he never would be, which is a stable living environment. He comes back into our office all the time and asks what he can do to continue to promote our program in the community. And what he's done is we've had 3 other students that have come through the program since him that he has caught literally 2 days after they get out of prison, some of them, moves them into his house, if it's okay with their probation. He follows the rules, but he moves them into his house, gives them a place to stay so that they can start the program, because he so believes in what we're doing that we can be able to move that forward in the community. We're just very proud to be here in Portland and being able to do the work that we can. Last year, we had 65 previously unemployed Oregonians that we helped get into full-time work, working in a trade where they can make an actual career. We thank the council for considering this grant, because it will just continue to help our program grow, and it will continue to do the good work in Portland that we're doing now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're all doing amazing work. And now, I'm going to call Brandon and Kenny back up in case council has any questions.
I might get thrown out in the direction I'm going to go by this crowd, so if you see that, don't be
Thank you, Madam President. So my question is, I know that this is new, and I know that we're putting systems in place. What we've heard today is really encouraging about how community-based organizations are really using these funds to really invest in people in a very holistic way. If you could wave a magic wand and say, if I could do X, we could either expedite the process or we could actually help more people. What would the X be that if you could do would improve the outcomes of these investments?
I will briefly say funding and staffing are critical. I mean, for so many of these services, the more the city can put the onus on itself, on its budget, on its staff to help people navigate these processes so that it's not complicated, it doesn't take all day to do. I think the city has an obligation to do that, so I would say, yeah, those 2 things.
I would add to that anything that you, as the city council, can do to encourage increased collaboration between bureaus. Oftentimes I have found myself kind of reaching out to a peer and then asking for support upward, in whether it's gathering data or finding out about what another bureau is doing. And so,
Well,
just
they're way
kind of
behind, aren't
anything
they?
that you as council think that you can do to support
might have to wait
that
for-
increase in strengthening the communication and collaboration between bureaus with this grant outcome in mind would be helpful.
I look forward to the work session that we're going to have, because I think that's when we can talk about really whether or not the investments are being made in the right place. Somebody mentioned 80% of the dollars going to police. That certainly was not what voters had intended, certainly not what the city council wants to, plans to support, I believe, moving forward, based on our conversation. So Brandon, good luck. The great thing about being at Metro is that we partner with Metro too, so might be able to help each other. Thank you both for the work that you've done.
Three who signed up are Lightning, Charles Ridgway Johnson, and Meg.
So we're going to the light, we're going to go to 2 minutes.
Okay. The speakers get 3 minutes, the public gets 2.
Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Data. I'm probably the only one in here since it's been legalized. I do not smoke marijuana, so I'm not your customer, but I did stand alongside of you when you were denied the waterfront permit to legalize cannabis and made sure you had that right to do that. Now, my position is the policymakers have missed it. We're in a saturated market. I'm asking a reduction from the 3% tax down to 1% to make sure the growers are subsidized at this time, because you have miscalculated overall on this market. Issue number 2 is that I agree on the grants, everybody get your money. I do have a problem with the first go around on ongoing past that point. I think there were 32 applicants. There's a need for $3.8 million. I think other people should be involved and rotated. My main issue is on these grants, I'd like to see more health-related grants given to people that understand the effects of marijuana, can educate the people. It should be your choice, even though it's legalized, just like alcohol. I'd like to see more of the neuroscience approach to understanding how that affects your neural pathways, and understand how that affects the gray matter, and understand that neuroscientists are doing studies on this and they do have some concerns. I want to see that data brought forward again, not to stop the legalization of your business, but to have an informed, educated way of making your final decision if you want to use these products or not, just like alcohol. So again, from the City Hall, your number one concern should be the health and the safety of the public. I did not hear you mention that once on any of these studies, and I point the finger at Commissioner Fritz, and I'd like you to review some of these studies, and I'd like you to get back to the committees and go over this. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Charles Ridgway Johnson, and it was great to see the city working hard on this program. I would like to encourage the people that came and spoke
You weren't thrown out.
keep engaging with the city and pushing, as Commissioner Marcy mentioned, this possibility that up to 80% of cannabis tax revenue is funding things in the police department at a time when the city of Portland is closing community centers is problematic. Hopefully we'll have some exact facts come out about where the whole
Well, they won't hate me for
cannabis tax
reducing the
revenue
tax.
breakdown comes out. The thing that I think would also be helpful for these entrepreneurs is, to the extent that the city is allowed, is more public information that's out there. It's not really, in my opinion, the best government practices when we sit up here and quietly say, an anonymous, unnamed place has decided that there's so many barriers and challenges that they should half the size of their pool down to 10 so that those people can be adequately served instead of going crazy trying to serve 20 people. That business needs to be named and supported. The reason it's important to name and support business, like the only one that I think that was a specific business I mentioned was Green Hip Hop off of, or I can't get the name right, but they know who they are. They're not killing us. Thanks very much. off Killingsworth, but that leaves me not knowing, having to dig deeper to find where is the Black women-owned dispensary that I can go to, because I don't want my money going. I mean, people need jobs at Sarah Dispensary, but some cannabis dispensaries are multi-state major corporations. And we need to talk about that, and we need to, as a city, live our values and support local cannabis, even if the local cannabis dealer has to buy from a big multi-state farm, is not positioned to deal with, the city is intimately familiar with the cannabis business since we fired Nathan Howard out of the mayor's office. But let's get the real data out there so we can patronize these businesses. Thank you.
Hi, Maggie, Portland Homeless Town Hall. I agree on stop giving the revenue to the police, and I also agree on the health-related grants that Lightning talked about. Also, supporting small local cannabis business owners is a great idea. Also, I want to talk about the intersection of housing discrimination and cannabis use. Now, in 2019, the JOA, that's the Government Accountability Office, court decision said that high contractors were not increasing their social equity in housing as they were mandated to do in 2013. A while back, the JOHS is the local HUD,
I know, it's ridiculous.
and they need
The
to be more
speaker's got 3
proactive about
minutes.
getting people into housing who use cannabis for health-related reasons who are disabled, because it's not just minorities, it's poor people who are disabled. And I was able to help one woman, a white woman who uses a walker and a wheelchair and had been using cannabis for 8 years and had never had any trouble with the law. And she was in a shelter because she used cannabis to manage her condition. And so I helped one person get housing, and the JOHS helped one person. And we need to have the JOHS go to the contractors and say, you cannot discriminate against people who are disabled who are using cannabis as their medicine, because as we know, Nancy Pelosi, the pharmaceutical companies, they want to keep medicine expensive. It's out of reach to people who are poor. And a way to help people who are poor afford their cannabis is charge people more for recreational use and help people discount it or give it free to people who are low income, and stop discriminating against them in housing.
She's been pretty good in her.
Well, first I want to thank all of our presenters today and staff, of course, for their work on this program and for service to our community. Our work on cannabis policy and civic life demonstrates the way to create a just future for all requires recognizing and repairing past harms. The grant program is an important component of this restorative justice work. I will continue to advocate for a larger share of the cannabis tax dollars, as I have been doing for the last 3 budget cycles. I agree that too much of it is going to the police bureau, and I've gone on record more than once expressing my extreme frustration that money is going to traffic enforcement and hasn't bought us 1 minute more of enforcement on the roads, which is really the only area that I could remotely justify in investing these dollars in.
Marijuana
But
is
unfortunately,
prohibited
these
nothing.
dollars have supplanted money in their budget and have not increased their budget and have therefore not increased enforcement, and I find that unacceptable. I also have repeatedly called on the state to take action on expungement. I don't think it's reasonable that the city and local nonprofit.
The states who should be paying for traffic division, they're the ones that get the money.
Laws that we've now decided to overturn.
We get 3%.
And
We don't even get that.
I appreciate Bill 420, but I'd like to see more action at the state level. I want to ensure that Portland continues to make meaningful investments in the communities that have been disproportionately harmed by our racist drug laws. I want to thank the Civic Life team for all of their efforts to strengthen this program. It's encouraging to see an increased number of applicants, and I expect that this will only continue to grow over time. I also want to thank the many Portlanders who continue to dedicate their volunteer time to provide invaluable input through community listening sessions and serving on our grant review committees. I want to give a special thank you to Jeanette, who has been a tireless advocate for the equitable cannabis policies, and to my appointee on the committee, Rachel Hillier, for her ongoing work to advance justice for all. Finally, I want to thank my staff, my colleagues and their staff, for their ongoing support of this work. I'm pleased to vote aye.
Fish.
Commissioner Daly hit all the bases, so I'll simply add, thank you, Commissioner, for your leadership on this matter as well. Aye.
Thank you. I also want to add my appreciation of really the hard work of Civic Life and actually really fleshing out this program. Brandon and his team have just been remarkably visionary. I think we can do better. I think with the work plan, with the work session, with us making sure that we're really investing in the right things and making sure that we are supporting the whole person to get their records clean and opportunities. Quite frankly, I don't want us limited to just construction. There are a lot of living wage employment opportunities that we should be helping people have a path towards. Great work so far. We've got a lot more work to do, but it seems like we've got a lot more, we have a lot of intentionality about who should benefit and how we make sure to hold people accountable for that benefit. I vote aye.
Thank you for a very, very interesting presentation. When I led the campaign to pass the tax in 2016, the City Budget Office said, just put it in the general fund, don't earmark it, don't do anything special, it'll pass. And that's what most of the jurisdictions around us that passed this local option tax did. We, working with the Office of Neighbourhood Involvement at that time, decided that we wanted to be specific that this tax should benefit people who've been disproportionately impacted, and public safety and transportation safety. And I actually question the statistic of 80% going to police, because I know that half of the annual allocation goes to Vision Zero for physical safety improvements. But anyway, I'm really glad.
80% didn't sound right.
No. So I'm glad that we're going to have the work session in the spring to discuss this. Thank you, Brandon Goldner, for all of your work on this program for 4 years. It was really interesting setting things up with you and your predecessor Victor Salinas. And it's a new thing. It's great when government can do something from the beginning and be really intentional about it. Kimi Urioka, you seem like you are really ready to continue great work on this program, so thank you for that. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you to Jessica Rojas, who's my representative on the committee, to Claire Adamsick, my staff who helped set it up 5 years ago when we were thinking about how to do this. It's been challenging, interesting at times, very frustrating, and at times really hilarious. So thank you very much, and I'm really pleased that what we were hoping to have happen, as we heard from all of the people who testified today about the good that's happened in the first year of funding, that was why we passed this tax. Thank you. Aye. Caller, I'd like to go to the item before from consent. I believe we have somebody from Risk here to talk about that. So would you please call 982, please?
Paid bodily injury lawsuit of Patricia Barger in the sum of $10,000 involving.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Becky Chow. I'm with City Hall on October 12, 2016. Ms. Barger was standing on a MAX platform at Southwest Jefferson across the street. When police officers were clearing protesters so that the MAX trains could resume operations. She claims that an officer struck her arm without warning. The officer reported at the time that Ms. Barger grabbed his baton as he approached her, and that he used a push-pull technique to get her to let go. The city disagrees with Ms. Barber's allegation that she was subject to unreasonable force, but in order to avoid further litigation costs and a possible adverse jury award, Risk Management at the City Attorney's Office recommended payment of $10,000, which includes medical bills, pain, suffering, and attorney's fees and costs.
Any questions from Mr. Chow? Just go up. Hold the answer, please. Go up.
Okay, Councilman, we do have a sign-up sheet.
Okay, and go ahead, Bob. Read the first.
I am.
Who are Dan, Robert West, and Charles Bridgman Johnson.
Go with 2 minutes if you need to run this down.
Thank you, Mr. Ritz, Council. I'm Dan Hamel from Copwatch. I'm not here to argue about the settlement. I just want to continue to urge the Council to go back to the policy of putting misconduct settlements on the regular agenda, to promote transparency and discuss the underlying issues. The fact that Ms. Barber's case is being settled after she filed a claim is rare, only in that many people who are harmed by police protest actions don't make it as far as filing a claim. In this case, we're talking about protests where police we're doing things that we've seen many times in Copwatch. They told people to move onto the sidewalk and then gave kind of anger to people even though they were actually following the original orders. For context, let's recognize this action took place over 2 years after the PPD began implementing the DOJ agreement, and we're supposed to de-escalate and use less force. Also, of course, the context is that this incident happened after City Council evacuated this chambers, leaving some of us locked in, went upstairs and voted on the Police Association contract in the heavily guarded Rose Room. After the vote was over and people stayed in the building to protest the contract, the police finally put them down to the stairs to the right across the breeze right there and outside into the street where they continued to use violence against the protesters. We definitely do not want to see a repeat of that kind of action after the council votes on the contract this time. I would appreciate the council's effort so far to be transparent about new contract negotiations. I also just want to raise the point that, we read all the police review board reports and there's no report about this officer being held accountable for the incident that happened. I heard the risk management person say the city doesn't believe they did anything wrong, but that doesn't necessarily mean they didn't violate policies.
Yes, my name is Robert West, and I wanted to bring up the fact that the police are continuously being violent toward people. I see it every once in a while, but I see it a lot more in protests. I was there at City Hall when that happened. In fact, I was pushed down the stairs. And, to me, police doing things they're not supposed to do is commonplace. And police units changing their names, like the gang squad to the gun violence reduction team. And then they're out there doing the same thing anyway. Is really bothersome to me that the city even allows that. What?
Do you support or oppose the settlement?
I support the settlement. The city should pay the lady for her injuries and stuff like that, and any other stuff that she went through. But I'm just sitting there saying these other things are things that the city police do, and lead up to that kind of stuff. The police don't decide all of a sudden, hey, we're going to be violent today. It escalates from one, and then as they see things happen, that's when it gets worse and worse and worse. City council has a duty to rein in their police officers, and on that day they did not rein in their police officers.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Charles Bridgman Johnson, and this $10,000 that is rightfully being dispersed that you need to quickly pay out is important, but it's also important that we should consider if there are other persons besides myself and Ms. Barger and a long list of people. Now, some of these people definitely won't be filing complaints because they're dead. Sean Keeler, Yaka, Armenia Lewis, now dead, is in a picture near the area where Ms. Barger is taking another unconscious person off the back steps of City Hall. So in light of the violence that happened there and is now costing you at least $10,000. Why at least $10,000? Because on this agenda item, we're not talking about whether there are any other open complaints or pending litigation from the police violence that happened just over 3 years ago. So, I beg your pardon?
That's right, we're not talking about that, was this item.
Yes, this item, but we can't continually isolate the expense of mistakes or intentional misconduct of police. If the city was really diligent to the people, if you on the council were diligent to the people that elected you, you would have a running clock, and every time a police settlement comes up, you would say, this $10,000 brings the bottom line of litigation against Portland Police Bureau up to $1,725,000 or whatever it is. Don't be afraid of transparency. In fact, I understand this is an individual business item, but people were severely injured, knocked unconscious, removed from the back steps of this building under the regime of the prior mayor during that weird lame duck time from when Ted Wheeler was elected in May and Charlie Hales lame ducked his way through the police contract until January 2017 when the mayor came in and then was burdened with the police contract approved by the lame duck mayor. So that's the context that you're having to pay out these $10,000 to this unfortunate woman who deserves this money. Thank you.
The last two are Maggie and Diana.
I'm Maggie Portland, Homeless Town Hall. I believe I was up in Joanne Hardesty's office telling her receptionist about a couple of mentally ill people that I've seen around the tourist areas, and the police come and take them away in handcuffs, and they're unarmed. All they were doing
Like you said, it's November 2016, so anything that you talked about with Commissioner Hutton.
I support paying the money out because you need to be accountable when you do bad things. All right.
Good morning, my name is Diana, and I'm in support of this. I think that this is a very, very unfortunate situation, and I just, I mean, there's really not much to be said in regards to how this came about, but one of my questions in regards to with this payout is there going to be counseling that will be provided for Patricia to be able to process what's happened to her? I think that, you know, when you go through something traumatic and you're passionate about something and you're making yourself vulnerable by protesting, regardless of what the topic is, you know, it's difficult when you feel that your voice has been silenced, and then for this event to have happened in 2016 and we're now, you know, in 2019, many years later, I wonder if counseling has been offered to her in order to just process this traumatic event, because to be in a crowd, to be injured, and to have to fight to get to this point today, I mean, that takes a lot of strength. And I think that she should be able to have the opportunity to speak with someone about this in a counseling session if she chooses.
Thank you. Betrayal was expressed. Your time is done. Thank you. This is an emergency ordinance. Please call the roll.
Bailey?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Hardesty? Aye. Fritz.
Aye.
Very good.
We now move to the regular agenda, item 987, please.
Accept guaranteed maximum price of $12,762,854 from HP Civil Inc. for the construction of Sullivan's Crossing bicycle lane.
Seeing you follow up on that audit. I think you'll find it interesting.
We have an hour and 20 minutes left on our regular agenda, so if you can move it in 15 minutes.
Hi, I'm Lester Spiller, the city's chief procurement officer. I have an invited testimony from a guest, Kelly Kupchak. She's the executive director of the Oregon Tradeswomen Incorporated. So we're here for the CPO report for the Sullivan's Crossing Bicycle and Pedestrian Bridge. The authorizing ordinance was presented to council on August 29th, 2018 and approved. The estimate for construction costs at that time was $11 million. The confidence in the estimate from Portland Bureau of Transportation was low. We issued the RFP on September 14th, 2018, and we received 3 proposals in October, one from HP Civil, one from Stacy and Whitbeck, and one from Hamilton. There was a mandatory pre-proposal conference before proposals were due. We had 10 prime firms attend, and we had one certified subcontractor attend as well. Solicitations were due on October 17th. The evaluation committee consisted of 4 representatives from the Portland Bureau of Transportation and a volunteer evaluator from our minority evaluator program. HP Civil was selected as the highest scoring proposer. We awarded a pre-construction services contract to them in the amount of $187,780 on August 19th, 2019. We amended that to include an amount to allow them to purchase the steel so that we could lock in pricing due to the tariffs and the volatility in the market, as well as to make sure that we had the steel in time for the project to meet the critical path. This project is subject to the city's Community Equity and Inclusion Plan, which applies to projects between 10 and 25 million. Within that plan, the city has set very specific goals. 20% of the labor hours in each apprenticeable trade need to be worked by certified apprentices, either by a state-approved facility or a federally approved program. We have an aspirational goal for minority and women apprentice workers at 31% of the total labor hours. Of the 31%, 22% need to be employed by minority workers and 9% by women workers. We also have an aspirational goal of 28% for journey level workers for all of the trades that are worked on the project. And within that 28%, 22% should be employed by minorities and 6% by women. Also in the Community Equity Inclusion Plan, we have our traditional aspirational goal of 22% for subcontractor and supplier utilization. That is broken down by 12% going to disadvantaged business enterprises and minority business enterprises, 5% to women business enterprises, and the remaining percent can be made up in a combination of any of the certified firms. You have in your CPO report the proposed utilization from our prime contractor, HP Civil. You can see that they have engaged 7 certified firms in various areas of work, including trucking, saw cutting, signing, flagging, paving, structural seal, and curb and sidewalk. The total utilization on this project at this point is 32.99% of the overall construction cost, which exceeds our goal of 22%. We have established a committee to oversee and provide advice, recommendations, and troubleshoot the contractor and the city on this project. Kelly Kupchak, as I mentioned earlier, is a volunteer on the committee. We've had a couple meetings so far, and we feel like things are going well, and we feel like we'll be able to meet the goals on this project. We have some solutions that Kelly and others on the committee are working on our behalf. And so we do have a path forward where we think that we'll be able to meet the goals on the project for the workforce side. For the subcontractor utilization, we're confident that HP Civil will meet 33% utilization and possibly higher.
Thank you. I don't remember if you put your name and title into it.
Sorry, Lester Spiller, the Chief Procurement Officer.
Good morning, and thank you, Council President and esteemed commissioners, for the opportunity to chat with you this morning about Sullivan's Crossing and the Community inclusion plan and the committee that is currently, unfortunately, we just met once, but we do have our second meeting planned. My name is Kelly Kupchak. I'm the Executive Director of Oregon Tradeswomen. We are a 30-year-old nonprofit that provides pre-apprenticeship training and construction readiness for women in our region, as well as
What's up?
leadership and guidance. I also serve on the Fair Contracting Forum and the city of Portland staff, Kathy Shirk, who's brought us together on the ad hoc committee to support these goals. It is really critical that as a community and as a city, we don't simply talk about ways, diversity, equity, and inclusion, but that we actually implement ways to make it happen.
All right. Hey, I gotta go.
And I would say that while there's still more work to be done, these are very complex issues. There's not a magic wand to bring it to ensure that firms have the opportunity to grow and that women and people of color have the opportunity to access these jobs, but that in working together and finding solutions in the city, working with community and industry collaboratively can lead us to meet and exceed those goals. So I'm very happy to be part of the committee and looking forward to continue to report good outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hudson? Thank you. Am I reading this correctly, Lester, that Westside Iron Incorporated will get the bulk of the resources from this contract?
Yes, you are. They are the subcontractor that will do all of the steel work.
So I want to say this is actually the best representation of intentionality around ensuring that minorities and women are actually in a position to benefit from these city contracts. And I just want to grow the record. It is rare for a majority contractor to subcontract out the bulk of the resources. I would sure like to see that a lot more often. If we're talking about building those small businesses owned by communities of color and women. And I just want to thank you, Kelly, for the work that Oregon Tradeswomen continues to do. It's been a model that I have a lot of respect for, so thank you both.
And for the discussion, report, please call roll.
I move in second.
So moved.
Second.
Now, roll.
Daly?
Well, even though this came under OMF, which is the Mayor's Bureau, this is a PVOT project, which was my bureau, and this was a really challenging situation we found ourselves in. So first I want to thank Kelly Kupchak from Oregon Tradeswomen Inc. and Steve Sims, the Director of the Apprenticeship and Training Division of the Oregon Bureau of Labor and Industries, for helping our team work through how to meet our apprenticeship goals on this project. Utilization rates were not something I was aware of until I ran for office, and have just become one of my burning issues and an ongoing frustration with at the city. So unfortunately, the Community Equity and Inclusion Plan Committee that Council directed to be formed to advise and oversee projects that meet the CEIP standards, which is those with a cost between $10 and $25 million, was not up and running when this project went through the procurement process. So I hope in the future we will have that committee and we can avoid pitfalls like this, although the solution is really wonderful. Kelly and Steve's commitment to helping the city reach its equity outcomes went above and beyond the normal call of duty in this case. As has been mentioned, PVOT is naming this bridge after former Transportation Commissioner, now a member of Congress, William Menard, in honor of his commitment to making the city safer for pedestrians and bicyclists. The public art for this project has yet to be designed, but I'm hoping it involves a giant bow tie or a small one somewhere on the bridge, a bow tie. I also want to thank the team that has made this project possible. Millicent Williams from PVOT, project manager Dan Layden, lead consultant and bridge designer Craig Totten from KPFF City Engineering staff, Brian Webb, Andy Sullivan, Stefan Busey, Mario De La Rosa, Cameron Glasgow, Kim Rusky, and Jamie Jeffrey. And
Lester, most of the time you come in front of me, you are sweating bullets because you know the kind of questions I'm going to be asking you. Today, I want to compliment you. I want to compliment the majority contractor, HP Civic Inc. I think when we're trying to ensure that we're holding people accountable to the standards that we envision, I think it's always important to have models of people who understand what the goals are and not just exceed it, but are very intentional about making sure that they're building those long-term partnerships. So I am very pleased and very happy to be a strong eye in support of this particular contract. Lester is smiling at me. He really smiles at me. Aye.
Thank you for being here, both of you. This is a long-awaited project, and it's really great to know that it's going to be done in a manner which the community can be proud of. So, 98, please.
Authorize $30 million of revenue bonds for North Macadam urban renewal area.
Do we have staff for this? Second reading, thank you. Please call the roll.
David.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Hardesty. Aye.
Aye. 989.
Authorize the acquisition of 1.87 acres of real property at 35319 Southeast Carpenter Lane in the amount of $800,000 to be used for the Bull Run filtration project.
Thank you. Colleagues, this property purchase is one of many steps towards the construction and completion of the Bull Run filtration project. We are buying the property for the land and not for the house. Although we do not have a full design for the plant, we do know we will need this piece of property for pipe alignment regardless of what length or number of pipes we select in the design process, which will be coming back to council over the next several months. We will be bringing both the design contract, which will allow us to pay for design services, and a resolution which will provide direction for the design of the plant on November 13th. Here to go over the purchase of the property is Ben Gossett, right-of-way manager, and David Peters, principal engineer from the Water Bureau, to answer any questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Fritz. And commissioners, my name is David Peters. I'm program director for the Bull Run filtration program. And I'd like to acknowledge in the audience today, we have a number of neighbors from around the property, around the Bull Run filtration program property. And I want to thank them for tracking the process and being here to participate in this process. The legislation before you today is related to the purchase of the property near the Bull Run filtration project site. It's related to the development of the filtration plant. Today, we have Ben Gossett here, the Water Bureau right-of-way manager, to explain the details of the proposed purchase.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Ben Gossett. I'm the right-of-way manager at the Portland Water Bureau. Item 989 would authorize the Water Bureau to purchase a parcel of property in Gresham, Oregon. You can see.
Do we have that so we can put it on the screen for people to see it? Do we have a slide so that people can see it?
I do not have an electronic
Okay,
version.
so could somebody from my office please bring in the graphic that I have in my office? Sorry.
Sorry about that. This ordinance would authorize the Water Bureau to purchase the subject property. It is located across from property already owned by the Water Bureau for the purpose of planning and constructing a filtration facility. The property consists of 1.7 acres. There is a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom house located on the property. There are also several other outbuildings, including a separate garage, and a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment, and a barn, and several other smaller outbuildings. The purpose that the Water Bureau has for purchasing the property Primarily is that it is a pipeline connection to Southeast Dodge Park Boulevard. The Water Bureau contract outlines a purchase price of $800,000.
If we could just pause your presentation for a minute and ask the community media folks to please focus in on this. So this, you can't see it very well, but this green is where the filtration plant is, this is where the property is, and this, there we go. This green is where the filtration plant will be built. This is Dodge Park Boulevard. The pipes will need to come off the property and get to Dodge Park Boulevard, and then they go west to the city. So essentially this would be a place where the picture is worth 1,000 words, and I apologize that we didn't have the exact picture.
So the orange square that you were pointing to is a strategic opportunity to connect to Dodge Park Boulevard. We have a contract currently to purchase the property for $800,000 and a 6-month term in which to do that, which expires on December 20th.
And the only thing I'll add is that this property, the broker's estimate for it was $814,000, and we are proposing to purchase it for $800,000. Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you very much. I have a couple of questions for Dave Peters. First of all, I think it's worthwhile every time we take up a piece of this to remind the public that we are currently under a federal mandate to treat our water for purpose emerging. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And we're not here today to have a hearing on whether the federal government's ruling is wise or not, or whether we think we agree with the science or not. Today, we're talking about the acquisition of a piece of property for the pipes. The question I have for you, though, in light of the revised cost estimates of filtration, is as follows. If the council chooses to revisit alternative technologies as a way of bringing the cost down, and I'm not forecasting what that would look like, but I'm just saying as part of the conversations we're having, if the council chooses to look at alternative technologies rather than revise the estimates upward as is one proposal, would we still need to acquire this piece of land, and if so, why?
Well, that's a wide-ranging question in terms of what the technologies might be looking forward. You may recall that in 2012, we were looking at a UV facility that would be at Headworks. If that was an option, that would not require this particular piece of property to construct. If there's other options that could be available that could go on this site.
Other kinds of filtration options?
Well, any filtration option that would be on the site, anything that would be on this site would require use of this property for pipelines.
So yes. Even if there was a proposal for a different kind of filtration technology, if there are alternatives, we would need this property for the pipes.
If we built at this site any filtration type technology, yes. If we built at this site, that would require the pipeline through this piece of property.
Okay, and I guess I appreciate Commissioner Fritz pulling up the visual, because I think it tells a story. But can you explain just very simply why the pipes can't make a connection to any of the areas where the current our property is contiguous with the road?
In terms of on the Dodge Park Road, Dodge Park Boulevard, yes. On that particular piece of property, Dodge Park Boulevard, after it goes around the curve, actually starts going downhill. It drops nearly 300 feet as it goes down the Lusted Hill. So the terrain through there is very steep and would be much more costly construction.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam President. To the public who may only read the headline and find out that we're buying a mansion, would you put on the public record why we are buying this particular piece of property and why it's vital to the project that you will be undertaking?
This particular property came available for sale here at the beginning of the project. We had a seller that was moving out of town, and we're looking to sell their property. So it was an opportunity that we looked at and said that's an opportunity where we're looking at pipelines to go out to Dodge Park Boulevard to purchase that property without having to go through processes in the future, such as eminent domain, to obtain property.
And is there any other way to complete the pipeline without going through this particular property?
Likely, there would be other ways to go that would require going across other properties, yes.
Okay, maybe my question should have been, is there a more cost-effective way for us to actually put the pipes in that we have to put in? And is this property the most financially sound way that you would recommend we move forward?
I guess my answer to that was we believe, yes, this would be the most financially sound way to move forward.
Should we get any questions? Okay, I believe we have 12 people. Thank you very much. We have 12 people signed up, and so we'll keep it for 2 minutes. And just remind everybody that the question on the table today is, should we purchase this property or not? That's only limited to, should we purchase this property or not?
The first three, please come on up, are Lightning, Ian Carter, and Lauren Carter.
Please.
Robert West.
Good morning, or good afternoon. Welcome.
Good morning, thank you. My name's Ian Porter. I'm a property owner near the Carpenter Lane site. Our road restoration plan has been proposed. With respect to this purchase of this home, a couple points I want to make. Just first off, we don't, as a community, we don't support the purchase of a private residence for this project and converting it into, really we're taking a private property for residents, converting it into a commercial industrial type property. So we're not comfortable with that change, with that land use change. But, the main point I want to make, though, is with respect to how this decision, the sequence of decisions that's being made here. You learned recently about a huge cost increase associated with this project at this particular site. So the cost increase has to do with the site location at the Carpenter Lane property and the type of treatment option that's been chosen, filtration. So that decision that's coming later concerning a massive budget increase, a 2 to 3-fold increase in cost, because again, of where it's being located and the type of treatment option chosen, that decision still has to be made. So I would ask the council to delay the decision on a purchase like this for, I know I can see maybe the strategic thinking behind why this could be an advantageous property to own, but this is, and in the public's perception, this is an $800,000 luxury home. And after hearing the testimony on the previous subjects that we just covered, it's a little difficult for me to see how this would be palatable to the public. To purchase this home at this early stage in the process, you may not even build this treatment facility here. And to your question, Commissioner Fish, it may be that you choose UV Headworks, which is just 1/12 of the cost of the current estimate for building at this particular location. So my request to the council is to please delay this decision until you know this is definitely the site where you intend to build this facility. Thank you.
Ben? So a quick question. So if we did that, then the property would be sold to somebody else. Then we have to come back with another alternative plan if in fact we decide to move forward with the construction. And so, which means if we really needed to go through that spot, we have to actually use our power of eminent domain. And it would cost us, I'm sure, more than $800,000 that we would pay today. How would you respond to that?
Well, That could be. I'm not a city planner, and this is not what I do professionally, but I think that, in fact, our property is currently on the proposed pipeline coming up the hill, right? I don't think that the city intends to take our entire property if it's decided it has to come up that way, which obviously we don't support that decision either. So purchasing this entire, the $800,000, what you're paying for, mostly what you're paying for is the cost of this home, not for the land itself. The 1.8 acres or so is not worth $800,000. So I think that there are other options. I didn't personally find the Water Bureau's response to your questions about other alternatives very satisfying. I think there are other ways that would cost certainly no more than the cost of this property to get that pipeline constructed.
In fairness, sir, and we've been throwing numbers around here pretty loosely, and I think we have to be careful. There's no proposal currently for 3 times the original estimate for this particular project, as you suggested. But let's go to your point. Tell us a more cost-effective alternative. This is your chance. You're before council. This is the item before us. You think there's a more cost-effective alternative? Give us an example.
Yes, UV treatment at Lustin Hill.
At this site for the pipes, other than this particular piece of property where the Water Bureau is proposing the pipes go through, have you identified a more cost-effective way to put the pipes in and out of this site?
Isn't that the job of the Water Bureau, to provide options for you? They've given you one choice. I'm here to tell you I don't support the Water Bureau property.
The Water Bureau has testified this is the most cost-effective approach. What I'm asking you is, do you have an alternative?
Are you offering me the opportunity to develop an alternative? If so, I will do that if you delay this decision. We can work together as a community to find another option. But the Water Bureau is supposed to provide that for you.
Sir,
they haven't answered your question.
I was giving you the courtesy of asking if you had an alternative, and you don't. Let's move on.
This is my turn. I am the wife of Ian. I'm Lauren Porter, and I live on Dodge Park, and the pipes are proposed to go through our property. And I just want to reiterate that we are opposed as a community to this. You will be ruining our community. We have a neighborhood. You are running your pipes through our neighborhood. You are buying a home for an industrial purpose. You are ruining our community here. You are going to ruin our property. And I want you guys also, this doesn't come up in the discussions, but you guys still have to go through the land use process. You are not permitted yet to build this facility here, yet here we are talking about the purchase of a home to run the pipes through for something that hasn't been approved yet. Thank you.
Yes, I'm opposed to it. Okay, my name is Robert West, and I'm opposed to this, and I'll tell you why. The city has a lot of buildings, I call them eyesores, and you're going to put an eyesore out in an outer area, a smaller community area, and you're going to, just build a building. I can't go out and just decide, hey, I'm going to build a store in a residential neighborhood. I got to make sure that I got the proper permits and stuff like that. It seems like you guys are rushing it. It also seems like the Water Bureau has a lot of property that they could put the building on their property instead of going out and buying property in Gresham. It just seems like it'd be better off that we build our stuff in the city of Portland. That way, if something happens, an emergency or something like that, we got our people, Portland Fire Department, Portland Police, whatever, responding to it instead of Gresham. We should be responsible for our own stuff. And I think if we build this filtration system, it should be in the city of Portland, not in the city of Gresham, not in the county or any place like that. You're talking about putting those pipes in. You can pipe the water right over to the city of Portland and have a filtration system here. You don't have to destroy a neighborhood or a community because you want to put a water filtration system out there. What's it going to do to the environment? What's it going to do to the animals and stuff out there? Did anyone ever decide was there anything? What if there's a leak? What kind of damage can that cause to the community around you guys?
Thank you. Just so you know, the Water Bureau purchased that property in 1975. So the Water Bureau has owned that property since 1975. Next one, please.
The next three are Brent Leathers, Carol Barca, and Dee White.
Listening to a whole morning of other stuff. Would you like to start, please?
My name is Carol Barca. I live in a community where the proposed water filter plant is being talked about. I oppose the purchase of the $800,000 mansion, as it's been called. You can run pipes through that property with easements. They're running pipes through my property with easements. I don't think it's necessary to purchase the land. You asked what happens if somebody buys that property before you make your decision. No one is going to buy that property. It's right across the street from a proposed water filtration plant. Trust me, if you buy it, you're never going to be able to resell it. Nobody's going to want to live there. There's other reasons I'm against it. The road is really unsafe. Dodge Park Boulevard is a narrow country road, and to have, one of the reasons they said they wanted to purchase that was to have a road coming from Dodge Park up to the proposed site. It's a curvy, narrow road. It's wooded in the fall. It is slippery from all the leaves. In the winter, it's icy because sun doesn't hit the pavement. Cars are coming around curves. They're going to be coming around that curve, and trust me, they drive fast. And there's going to be a construction vehicle pulling out, or heaven forbid, a chemical truck pulling out. It's just not a good road. It's in a slide area. Trees are falling on the road all the time. A gentleman was killed when a tree hit his truck. What happens if a tree hits a chemical truck that's coming into the plant? I just don't think this property is necessary for a road. I don't think it's necessary for the pipes because you can use easements. And I just don't think it's a good choice. I would like to invite all of you to come out and visit our area. We have beautiful views in Mount Hood. It's a peaceful rural community where an industrial water treatment plant does not fit. And I really question whether you're going to get your land use permit unless, I don't know. It doesn't fit the community.
My next. My name is Brent Leathers. I'm also a property owner in this same neighborhood, and I'm hired counsel that is supporting the group, and we will contest you every step of the way. If we happen to lose at the county conditional use hearing, I want to make sure you hear me again. I said this to you folks before. We will appeal it to LUBA. If we happen to lose at LUBA, we will take you to the Oregon Court of Appeals. I don't say that as a threat. I just want you to really understand the house of cards that you're building this $1 billion water treatment facility on. I also have kind of morphed my presentation to you today as I've listened to where you're headed. I have provided you copies. If you'd like to get out of the groupthink of the Water Bureau and actually consider some other objectives, including the history that your body has made decisions upon, the cost, some articles that were written about your own statements. I presented you a nice document that we presented to the Public Utility Board that I really would just encourage you to consider reading. And finally, Commissioner Fish, I'd like to address the point that you just raised with Mr. Porter, and I want to quote from a newspaper article from Oregon Public Broadcasting. These are quotes that I'm about to read you. Quote, Seattle and San Francisco built ultraviolet plants to comply with the EPA's LT2 rule, and 5 years ago, the Portland City Council directed the Water Bureau to develop plans for a UV system as a hedge in case the city didn't receive its waiver. What you see in front of you here on this table are the specifications for a UV plant. Water Bureau Director Mike Sturr told the council this pile of paper is worth $16 million, so you have a UV design on the shelf. He said, thanks to those existing plans, STIR said the city could complete construction on a UV plant at the Bull Run Headworks facility within 5 years at an estimated cost of $105 million. So, sir, you have that in your hands currently. I just wanted to make sure you knew that. Thank you, folks.
My name is Dee White. I'm totally against this purchase as well. I'm just going to show to the audience. I know they can't see it because y'all are going to provide the mansion that y'all want to tear down to put in some pipes when you haven't even decided where you're going to put the pipes. I mean, there's all these proposals out for 2 short pipes, 1 long pipe, 2 long pipes, 1 short pipe. You don't even know where you're running them. So when you bought this house back in June, when you put down your $30,000 earnest money, you had no idea where the pipes are going to go. This is just popped up, Amanda. When originally you told the broker was told that it was going to be a job headquarters, construction headquarters for the engineers, a job shack, if you will. And when that hit the press, all of a sudden it's like, oh, you get this fancy map drawn, and you say we're going to run a pipe through it now. Well, that's just it's so disingenuous and not transparent and not fair to the public. I'm going to read just from the pub letter that is very, very factual that Brent was just talking about that I would encourage y'all to read. It's really, really good. But one of the things I want to read is Portland City Council approved a budget in the range of $350 to $500 million in 2018. From the testimony on the work session a couple of weeks ago, the water conduit, the pipe improvement costs were not included. Now the cost estimates are up to $650, or actually up to $850, up to $1.2 billion. These are figures from the work session. If the decision makers had known the cost would be double or potentially triple the original estimates, would they have made these decisions? This is a quote from the Cascade Policy Institute that came out with a report on this last month. Again, if the decision makers had known the cost would be double or potentially triple, would they have made the this different decision?
Thank you. Your time is
Is
up.
it possible, one more quote,
No, your time is up.
that this is intentional malfeasance by the
Okay,
bureaucracy?
your time is up, but I have a question for you. Because you are a very active participant in these kinds of issues, and I want to give you an opportunity to answer one very simple question. We are discussing whether we need to have access to pipe. We'll be discussing alternatives to the technology. We're going to be having a robust conversation about this. Do you acknowledge that we are required to treat our water for cryptosporidium?
Yes.
Thank you.
Can I answer the question you asked?
No,
The next 3, please.
Next 3, Lizzie Leathers and Pat Beaver.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your patience. Would you like to start?
Are there other people showing up?
Please go ahead.
Okay, my name's Jeff Knapp. I live in the general area out there. I am opposed to the purchase of this property, this $800,000 house. I must say I am sadly astonished that a bureau with such a tarnished reputation for inappropriate expenditures and wild cost overruns would think that paying $800,000 for a mansion is an appropriate job site office would be a swell idea. It's no wonder that the price of the filtration fiasco they are deceptively pushing at the city council and ratepayers has already doubled. Has the Water Bureau forgotten the Waterhouse debacle that cost over $900,000 or the $10 million settlement from 2017? The city council has a responsibility to the ratepayers to stop this sale and revisit the now doubled cost of the filtration fiasco in light of astounding changes in the costs. The facts just do not support this filtration effort, and at the moment the purchase of this property, which is still subject to the land use rules, seems to sort of develop its own needs for entry ad hoc, and I stand ardently opposed. And there are several facts I'm wondering if the city council is aware of. They have issued the the mandated treatment of cryptosporidium has grown off into a Trojan horse of sorts for the Water Bureau to get a list of wants that they want out of this. The Water Bureau has listed, well, filtration is going to help us solve landslides, but the U.S. Forest Service did a mapping study of the watershed and found that less than 2% of the watershed is highly susceptible to landslides. And I'm not sure if the Commission is aware of its own, the Portland Water Bureau's geotechnical engineer, who has reported that the pipelines between headwaters and Powell Butte are one of the more resilient parts of the system, but it is one of the more resilient parts of the system. The big infrastructure problem is in the city.
Hi, I'm Linda Leathers, and I just have a couple of quotes for your own paper, but I want to state them. This is from the Water Bureau memo dated August 31st, 2018, with the title Filtration Plant Key Decisions and Processes, and I quote, "Develop capital and operating costs so that decision makers can fairly evaluate the alternatives," unquote. And quote, "The top 3 community values are cost, public health, water quality, and resilience," unquote. And that is from the Water Bureau Consultant FDR, February 21st, 2018.
Thank you. That was very succinct testimony. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Pat Meyer, and I am a landowner on a property on Carpenter Lane. I want to thank you for listening to our testimony. I am disappointed, to say the least, that Mayor Wheeler is not here. I have 3 items that I would like to address. You have paper there, so I'm not great at public speaking, so I'm going to read if you don't mind. One is the location. I am on record as saying that I oppose the purchase of this property due to the bigger picture of placing this plant on the property there. Location. It is no surprise that the rural landowners and residents of Carpenter Lane would oppose the placement of a mega industrial plant on farmed property, which is currently what the property is used for. I'll make no pretense for our concern for the perpetual negative impacts that will be on our community. As agricultural land, it tends to get lost in the discussion that the real value of land there is agriculturally zoned and operated as such. Currently in the U.S., we lose 3 acres of agricultural land a minute. That's farmland to commercial and industrial uses. That's 1.5 million acres a year. That precious loss not only affects the landscape and the lifestyles of those in the area, but of the natural habitats of the wildlife. As agricultural land, it is an immensely valuable in natural storing and purification of the water and sequencing of carbon and greenhouse gases through plant farming. As Oregonians, we have a rich history of understanding the need and value of our natural landscape, and I urge you to consider the cost ramifications of allowing this site to become an industrial mega plant.
Thank you for your testimony. I actually have some good news on the cost and for the ratepayers as well. Yesterday we were invited to apply for a Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act loan. It's called the WIFIA loan. The Environmental Protection Agency manages it. So we hope, we've been invited to apply. If we get the loan, it would be a low interest loan that would significantly reduce the cost to the ratepayers. We won't know whether we get that till next year.
You want to reply to that?
Sure.
A loan is still a loan.
Right.
You still have to pay it back.
It's a low interest loan that gets paid back over a long period.
Most people that have budgets still have to qualify and have to figure out a way to pay it back.
Right.
It is the middle class that will be burdened with this.
Thank you.
The last 2 are Paul Willis and Floyd Jones.
you like to have the last word, Fly? Welcome.
Lloyd Jones, and as those here know, I'm a founding member of Friends of the Reservoirs. I'm also on the board of directors of Water Accountability and Trust and Reform. I'm speaking for myself today, and I, of course, oppose this based on the bigger picture, but I wrote to you all back in July of 2017 prior to your August decision, and I said then, how can a rushed risk probability and cost analysis be trusted? Of course, now we see it cannot. And that was the problem then, and that's the problem now as we rushed through this. There was outrage at your last work session over the Water Bureau failing to tell you about these big pipe costs. Well, why wasn't there outrage as well over their slipping in there? We're not just going to be building a chemical adding filtration plant to treat non-infectious cryptosporidium, but they said, oh, we'll also add ozone. That was one of your alternatives back in 2017. UV radiation, ozone, chlorine dioxide, or chemical filtration. So now they have you building 2 plants. We have conduits running to Lusted Hill. Of course, you know that we don't support building any treatment plant at all because we don't have infectious cryptosporidium. We would not ever have it, barring gross malfeasance on the part of the Water Bureau, because we're not going to let humans or domesticated animals into the watershed. We do need to revisit this entire decision. And other folks have made some of the other points that, you know, these costs are unaffordable right now for the middle class. Yes, there's a great low-income program. We've had that all along. We have the best low-income program. That doesn't help the middle class pay for these water bills. And you know, if we had a choice of saying how were we going to comply with this, I think we should still go back and seek a waiver. But nonetheless, chlorine dioxide, the cheapest option, no additional unwanted chemicals. Thank you.
That's all signed up, I believe. So thank you to everybody who's come today, and I'm truly sorry about the impact on your community. And I have to keep in mind that this project is designed to provide safe and abundant water for 1 million people for many generations to come, and that's what's at stake here. So this is the first reading of a non-emergency ordinance and moves to second reading. Next item, please, Carla.
Authorize the Director of the Bureau of Environmental Services to execute lease documents for space in Pioneer Tower necessary for Bureau operations.
Thank you, Madam President. We're a little bit past the lunch hour, so we're going to try to be very economical in our final presentations. Eli, if you just please brief presentation and answer council questions. Eli Allison is the property manager of the Bureau of Environmental Services.
Thank you. I'm as Commissioner Fish said, I'm the property manager for the Bureau of Environmental Services. This ordinance will allow environmental services to continue a lease. Environmental Services currently has 2 spaces downtown, Portland Building offices where our staff have been relocated to the 400 building, and then Pioneer Tower where about 95 staff that did not fit in the Portland Building are located at. Our current lease at Pioneer Tower expires November 30th, 2019, so that's next month. After that expiration, if we don't have the ability to sign a new lease, we can go into holdover, at which point our rate will pretty much double for our monthly cost. Over the course of the last year, BES has been working with a broker. We visited 8 buildings downtown. Of those buildings, we requested bids for 5 and received offers for 4. Of the 4 offers, we found Pioneer Tower to be the most economically feasible for the Bureau over the course of the 5-year lease. Sorry, I condensed everything quite quickly. I apologize. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Great. Any questions, colleagues? Commissioner Honesty.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you so much for being very responsive to the questions that I've been giving you all week long. I think my question is probably just for the record, because I think there's a broader city conversation about how many buildings does the city of Portland actually own? how much rental space are we actually taking up? And is there a better approach other than us just leasing from the private market? I'm not gonna put you on the spot to try to answer those questions. I think that's really a timeline, a conversation to be had. But for me, I am concerned that we have all these pocket contracts with private companies, and I don't see a big picture about how are we doing space management as the city. So again, not a question that I expect you to be able to answer, but I feel better because I said it out loud, rather than just in my head. Thank you.
Commissioner, can I also just make a comment? I think this predates your service. When we did some of the original planning over the Portland building, and we actually did a comprehensive look at space, and with specifically the goal that you've enumerated, which is to shrink our footprint in the private sector and maximize our use of public space. I think now that the Portland building is nearing completion, I would welcome and I would join with you in asking the CAO to give us an update on space and see how we're doing. Because I think it's a very important conversation, and we should be maximizing the use of public space. And I concur with you wholeheartedly.
Thank you. Did we sign up for this?
I believe they both left, Charles and Maggie.
Right. This is an emergency. Please call on.
David? Fish.
Well, Eli, thank you very much. We had a team of 10 answering questions from Commissioner Hardesty's office this week. They haven't slept or bathed since then, but we appreciate the thoughtful questions and the give and take. And as I said earlier, I join with my friend and colleague in this larger question, maximizing our space utilization. So I think it's a very good point. And on that note, I'll vote aye.
Hardesty.
Aye. Fritz. Thank you for your work and for explaining very quickly how you went through a process to come to this. Aye. Ordinance is adopted. 991, please.
Amend Public Improvements Code to make requesting and participating in Bureau of Environmental Services administrative reviews more customer friendly.
Commissioner Fish.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, the proposed code changes before you will make the Bureau of Environmental Services administrative review more user-friendly and add greater transparency. Who can argue with that? Here today to give you a brief presentation on a fairly comprehensive piece of work is Rochelle Altman, who's the policy analyst from the Bureau of Environmental Services. Thanks for staying with us this morning, and welcome.
Thank you. Again, for the record, my name is Rochelle Altman, Bureau of Environmental Services. And as Commissioner Fish mentioned, I'm just going to briefly walk you through some code changes regarding BES's administrative review process. And just for the public who might not be familiar, administrative review is the name for a process we use where customers can ask for reconsideration of a Bureau decision or action affecting them. And BES has a variety of programs that use administrative review. And with an eye to making these processes more customer-friendly, we took a close look at our code and rules and identified a variety of changes that we wanted to make to achieve 3 goals. The first goal was to enhance customer service by making requesting and participating in administrative review more predictable and consistent, particularly across programs. We had all different levels of detail in our rules and processes, and so we wanted to achieve a basic level of consistency and predictability for customers. Second, we wanted to expand access to administrative review by making eligibility for review the default and then simply having a short list of items not eligible for review, rather than having incomplete lists of what is eligible and not eligible for review in rule and also sometimes code. And then third, these efforts would facilitate consistency and administration by BES staff. So the most substantive and numerous changes we identified were to administrative rules, where the details regarding administrative review processes either lived or what we felt most appropriately would live. However, we also identified changes to code, which we bring to you today. The changes to rule were adopted under existing authority and revised existing rules, and those took effect earlier this summer with Commissioner Fish's support.
And so, to briefly summarize the most significant code changes that we're proposing to you, they would make eligibility for review the default and would highlight that any exceptions to eligibility will be specified in administrative rules. They remove lists of items regarding eligibility from code so that they're just conveniently located in one place for customers, and that would be in rule. This also helps avoid confusion when list and code don't match up to list and rule. In addition, we are proposing to delete language regarding appeals to the code hearings officer, where those provisions are out of date, where those provisions are inconsistent with more recently adopted city code hearings code in Title 22 of Portland City Code. And finally, we're proposing changes to make language gender neutral. And I just really want to emphasize that the changes that we're proposing don't make any changes to what is eligible for review. So if something prior to the code and rule changes was treated by the Bureau as either eligible for review, we're not, those items are not changing. There were a few instances in the rulemaking where something previously was on neither list, and that had created confusion and frustration for all parties, and so we clarified whether that item was or was not eligible for review. Janice Thompson from the Citizens Utility Board, along with members of the Development Review Advisory Committee and the Portland Utility Board, were all given an opportunity to review, and we solicited input from them. And Janice Thompson, she actively engaged in the review and informed what became the public comment draft. And no public comments were received, but Janice, who's not here today, she did share with me what she believes are the positive impacts for our ratepayers and customers. She authorized me to share the following. She wrote, referencing some code changes that the Ombudsman championed in 2015, quote, "CUB supported the initial code changes suggested by the City Ombudsman. Additional clarifications to BES provisions seemed needed, and I was pleased that BES planned a review of code and rules to enhance clarity. I let BES know of my interest in this review and appreciated the opportunity to make comments and suggestions at key steps in their process. There is now more consistency and transparency in BES rules and code, which should be helpful to both the Bureau but also to customers." End quote. So in sum, the proposed changes in combination with recently adopted rule revisions will benefit ratepayers and customers by making requesting and participating in our administrative review processes more customer friendly, and by ensuring consistency in the way that our Bureau staff administer administrative reviews. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I hope you will support our proposed code changes.
Rochelle, I'm hopelessly biased because you work for one of my bureaus, but may I just say, even at this late hour, that was an A+ presentation. Thank you very much. It was comprehensive, it was succinct, you gave us all the information we needed, and you set a very high bar. Thank you very much.
And you smiled at us the whole time. I mean, it's rare that people smile at us when they're testing.
They smile at me?
Do they? Oh, she's smiling at you.
There you go. There you go.
That explains it.
Thank you. Signed up. No one else signed up. Non-emergency ordinance, second reading.
Nice work,
Commissioner Fish, you have two items left, and it's unfortunate you were the end of the rotation for your items. They're listed for 35 minutes.
Who's here for 992? Could you come forward for a second? I have a question, just I want to ask you. Does this have to be addressed today for any particular reason? If the presiding officer set this over to next week, does that create any kind of logjam for you?
Mr. Commissioner, Ruben Gonzalez with Bureau of Environmental Services. It is our preference to present today, if at all possible. We were on the agenda for last week and we were bumped to this week. We do have a timeline with respect to this acquisition. In that we've already secured our CMGC contractor and we're hoping to begin construction.
So Commissioner Fritz, Madam President, we could potentially take 993 and set that over. Because that's not time sensitive if we do this quickly.
I realize that your Parks Bond staff have been here all morning, but that would be my preference because we always seem to rush to report on Parks Bond and I'd rather have enough time to
So
really think about
is the
it.
Parks Bond team okay with that? I mean, it would be not our preference, but could we set this over and find, maybe see if we can find a special time next week, Carla, to have this presentation?
Hi, I'm Robin Hoffman, Bond Program Manager. We would be completely happy to come back to you with a little more time next week. But do know that we are presenting the report to our oversight committee tomorrow at our regular meeting with them. So as long as you're okay with that, I'm happy to look forward.
I'm anticipating, given so much, all the good news in the report, that we're going to accept it fulsomely. But I do agree with Commissioner Fritz that the default would be we'd rush right through it if we would not take a chance and take the time to actually acknowledge the work that's gone into this. So
You have a hard out this afternoon at 3.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
so what I would suggest is we just set 993 over till next week, and we'll work with the clerk's office to see if we can get a time. And then just do 992.
There is, we can do the 10:15 that morning, next Wednesday.
Hey, how about that?
Get that
upgraded.
That's your comments. So we're going to set over 993 till next week, 10:15 time certain.
Thank you, Carla.
And now let's read 992. It's our last item of the morning.
992, authorize the Bureau of Environmental Services to acquire certain permanent and temporary property rights necessary for construction of the Southwest Capitol Highway Stormwater Improvements Project number E10939 through the exercise of the city's eminent domain authority.
Thank you, Council President. What I was going to do is thank your fine team who was here ready to prepare, and they all were left to go to lunch, I assume. I just wanted to appreciate that they sat here all morning and are willing to come back next week.
Thank you for that. They not only prepared a presentation, but we did a dress rehearsal yesterday, sent out a press release, so they were fired up to go. But I do think having a time certain gives us a little more freedom to present next week, so thank you very much. Colleagues, our final matter this morning is a multi-bureau project involving BES, PBOT, and the Water Bureau to improve Southwest Capitol Highway. This project includes stormwater management, new walkways and bikeways, and an upgraded water system. In order to build the green infrastructure necessary to manage the stormwater, BES will need to acquire certain property rights. We have BES staff here today to discuss the project. Joe Dvorak, Engineering Manager, Ruben Gonzalez, Project Manager, and Lisa Masinski, Environmental Specialist. Thank you all for being here. We set aside about 15 minutes to get extra credit if you do it in 5.
Great, thank you, Commissioners. My name is Joe Dvorak, for the record, with BES. So we'll talk a little bit about the project background. We'll show some slides of the property question, and happy to answer any questions that you have at this point. I'll turn it over to Lisa.
For the record, I'm Lisa Mashinsky with the Bureau of Environmental Services. Portland's Bureau of slides here. Portland's Bureau of Transportation, Bureau of Environmental Services, and Water Bureau working in coordination on the street, stormwater, water main, fire suppression improvements on Southwest Capitol Highway. This project will improve safety and mobility for all modes of travel while improving stormwater management, protecting water quality in local streams, and updating water supply infrastructure to meet water demands. The project is focused on a 1-mile-long stretch of Southwest Capitol Highway from Multnomah Village to West Portland. The project has an estimated construction value of around $18 million, and Environmental Services estimated $10.5 million to the project. Just a little on the background. BES has been engaged with residents in this neighborhood for several years due to the public and private stormwater issues that exist in this area. Unlike older parts of our city that developed with curbs and storm drains in the late 19th and early 20th century, this area was a semi-rural landscape annexed by the city in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s with no formalized stormwater infrastructure. This, combined with the steep slopes and low infiltrating soils, makes stormwater management in this area challenging. We see this project as an opportunity to collect and manage runoff from the new transportation system improvements, as well as incorporating surrounding drainage areas as part of a regional strategy which will maximize the impact of the project. In total, the stormwater system improvements will manage and treat an area of about 50 acres, which includes the project footprint of about 6 acres. So this project has been a long community priority for the transportation and stormwater improvements. Design of the current project has had a robust public involvement process that began in 2016 and continues today. The Capital Highway Subcommittee, a subset of the Volunteer Multnomah Neighborhood Association, has served as a sounding board for the project design elements and construction impacts. PBOT and BES staff performed 55 property visits or consultations to provide adjacent property owners information on the project impacts and their concerns. 3 project newsletters have been sent to 688 visitor collaborations. 10 e-bulletins have been sent to a large email text distribution list. That includes now more than 1,000 people. Large open houses with detailed project information were held. Office hour events, staff training, and other open houses. And construction-focused open houses planned for this fall. We did specific outreach, including letters, emails, phone calls, and site visits to the properties affected by the acquisition of the property rights, and have been having ongoing communication over the past year of design work. So I'm going to turn it over to Ruben, who's going to cover a bit more on the project specifics.
Good afternoon, Madam President and Commissioners. Ruben Gonzalez with Bureau of Environmental Services Design Services Division. Environmental Services completed a stormwater concept design analysis in 2016 and identified opportunities for neighborhood-scale regional stormwater facilities to treat and slow stormwater. And we did subsequent planning to identify suitable locations. The concept and initial design also included 24 distributed stormwater facilities or green streets, which were to be lined due to geotechnical concerns to prevent infiltration, and would have been placed within the multimodal transportation improvements integrated into the proposed PBOT improvements. At the 30% design stage, BES's Asset Systems Management Division tested the effectiveness of the proposed project scope with a series of alternatives. This effort resulted in the removal of 24 distributed stormwater facilities and the retention of the 4 regional facilities, which will result in a capital and life cycle savings of $1.4 million and $2.5 million respectively. The BES project scope now includes a new stormwater collection and conveyance system in the roadway totaling about 7,000 linear feet. Flow from the new collection system will be routed to the 4 new regional stormwater treatment and detention facilities, which will improve water quality and protect downstream infrastructure and natural assets in the 3 local streams to which they discharge, Woods, Tryon, and Vermont Creeks. As mentioned, collectively, the regional facilities will treat and manage stormwater from within the 6-acre project area, as well as additional areas totaling nearly 50 acres, and the system as a whole has been designed with future development and system expansion in mind. As can be seen from the graphic, 2 of the facilities will be located along Multnomah Boulevard west of 40th Avenue, 1 on Dolph Court just east of Capitol Highway, and 1 at the end of 42nd Avenue near Woods Memorial Natural Area. 2 of the 4 regional stormwater facilities, north and south Multnomah Boulevard facilities, require permanent and temporary property rights as described in the proposed legislation. A rendering of the South Multnomah stormwater facility is shown here. 2 vacant tax lots adjacent to the south of the Southwest Multnomah Boulevard right-of-way between 45th and 40th Avenues are required for the South Multnomah Regional Facility. In addition, temporary construction easements and permanent easements are necessary at the properties adjacent to the South Multnomah Facility for construction staging and to construct the maintenance, access driveway, and retaining walls.
But just to be clear, that major pond area, that's on property that Environmental Services owns?
No, those 2 properties shown, those are the vacant tax lots that we'll be working to acquire.
They're vacant?
Yes, they're vacant.
Thank you.
A rendering of the North Stormwater Regional Facility is shown here. A temporary access easement and a temporary construction easement at adjacent property, which is a post office, is requested to construct this facility. The costs incurred in connection with the acquisition authorized herein shall be charged to the Sewer Operating Fund fiscal year 2019 to 2020 budget, BES project number E10939.L65. To accomplish the project's goals and to construct the project as designed, the city must acquire property interest rights described and depicted in exhibits A through B RFP by March of 2020, so construction of the project can begin on schedule. And we'll thank you for your time and be happy to answer any questions.
Could you just go back to the slide showing the post office, please? The map, the one before that. So does it require taking the parking area as well as the grassy area?
Yes, as you can see, a portion of the post office parking lot will be reserved for construction, construction staging and storage easement area, and then the northern portion, kind of on the northeast corner there, will be an access easement where we'll redirect traffic through the post office to reconnect it to the exit on Southwest 40th Avenue.
Just to clarify, these are temporary, for the post office, temporary property rights.
Okay, that was my question, yeah. Okay, and then, funny, the Dolph Court site that you showed, that has properties up the circle where you showed it, that has houses on it. So is that, are you intending to acquire houses?
Excuse me, that graphic is perhaps a little bit inaccurate with the depiction of the oval there.
It's on
the
the south
facility
side,
is
right?
on a vacant land that BES acquired in, I believe, 2016.
That's what I thought, because where that circle is, I used to live. Are we planning to acquire any houses, any buildings?
No.
Does anybody else have any questions? Thank you very much for your presentation. You got us done at 1 o'clock. Anybody signed up to testify, Colin?
Is this time sensitive?
Yes.
I move to put an emergency clause on this ordinance.
For the purpose of, it's in the public interest to get this done as quickly as possible. Commissioner Davis.
I seconded it before you.
I'm sitting this side.
It's all good.
Quite all right. It's called vote on the amendment, the roll on the amendment.
You, David?
It's on the amendment, exactly.
Fish?
Aye.
Hardesty?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye. And now call the roll on the final ordinance, which is now an emergency.
You, David?
Great project. Happy about the collaboration between 3 bureaus and 3 commissioners' offices. Love to see more of this moving forward. I vote aye.
Fish?
Commissioner Daly, thank you for highlighting that, because I think in the last few years, we've really made great strides, and particularly the way in which the infrastructure bureaus work together, plan together, do community engagement and the like. And the fact actually that an item of this significance has been in the pipeline for so long has not generated any public testimony today, even though someone could come and object or express a concern. Just tells you how effective the outreach has been in the community conversation. So thanks to the team for their good work, and I'm pleased to vote aye.
Hardesty? Aye. Fritz? Well, on behalf of my neighbours in Southwest, I'm going to say thank you very, very much. I'm sure they would love to have been here. There's such gratitude that this project is finally getting done. I actually walked that entire section last night, and I'm going to be so happy to be able to actually walk on a sidewalk from Barber Boulevard to Montgomery Village. And I'm also really happy that you did purchase the property opposite where I used to live, because I'm pretty sure that my aging cat is in there somewhere. She went missing at the end of her long and happy life, so I will be thinking of that property's name as Lucy's Pond. And I'm really happy that you're going to be able to do it. Aye. With that, our agenda is completed, and we are adjourned until 2 o'clock.